Welcome to EquinEdge Live. I'm Scotty McKeever from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and welcome to the Breeders' Cup Preview Show number 3. This is number 3 of 3. If you haven't seen the other 2, you can go back to YouTube and check those out before tomorrow's races. So we did a show on Tuesday and covering the races for Friday. So you might want to check that out. And we're covering 4 more Breeders' Cup races today. If you're following along, it's races 8 through 11. And, of course, we've got some special guests. We're recruiting 4 top handicappers and horse racing personalities to cover these difficult races, these difficult 3 races, because we know that one is an absolute lock. We'll talk about that later. And we have a special guest that's going to be joining us on the show that you wouldn't have any idea about. And but we're going to welcome in our first guest, one of my favorite people, the Sarge, Nick Hines. Hoorah!
Reporting for duty, my friend. It is a pleasure, and I don't think we've probably talked interface via Zoom, Streamlink for, I don't know, it's been a while, but it's great to be back here on EquinEdge.
Well, it's good to have you. I mean, you've interviewed me a few times back in the day when I was just kind of beginning, and you were getting your start at TVG, but former horse trainer, current on-air host and analyst for FanDuel now. You're advising for My Racehorse Syndicate as well as the Edge Racing, of course, and Bloodstock agent and consultant is a big part of what you're doing as well. I guess one of my questions, Sarge, is the My Racehorse. I mean, that's really did a big splash. And how is that going?
Well, I mean, at this stage of the game, it's going pretty tremendous. You know, I think through the pandemic, it was probably the perfect storm for them to launch, in a sense that, you know, we've been going for better than 4.5 years now, likely 5. But I think a lot of it had to do with folks felt that they wanted to somehow, you know, be involved, get involved with horse ownership without having to mortgage their homes. And I think in this sense that you have the opportunity to come in at, you know, a nominal fee, nothing that's too outrageous. And the bottom line is to be part of the process. And this year, for the second straight year, My Racehorse has going to Vegas, going postward for the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf, which, you know, for me, I think cycle-wise, I feel as if she's coming into this race better this year than she was last year. But, you know, again, it's a highly contentious race.
It is.
It's been an amazing process. Not only do we have My Racehorse, but also the segue to that, which is your traditional syndicate with Edge Racing. And I am fortunate to advise on that with a very long-time friend, and Joe Moran. Known him since he was a youngster. I trained for his father, and Edge is off to a very, very fast start. And they've been going for a couple of years now.
So, okay, so I want to expand on the My Racehorse thing, only because I've heard a lot of people talk about this, like, yeah, I'd love to own, but it must not really be that great being, part of a micro share, essentially, of a few horses. Can you kind of explain to people what it's like to have a micro share, and do you feel like you own the entire horse? And I genuinely don't know, because I've never done that before, and I might do that going into next year. But what is that feeling like for all these people? I do know this: when I was at Del Mar last season, I went up and there was like 500 owners, and the energy in that room was tremendous.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it can be a bit of a daunting task when you kind of go into horse ownership. When you're coming into the process, it's very straightforward. And obviously in the likes with the likes of social media now, there's a lot of negative connotation that comes out of that, in a sense that, they talk about, markups, they talk about commissions and whatnot, management fees, if you will. I think anytime you get involved with any traditional syndicate, for the most part, they will charge a markup initially from the purchase of the horse. But I think the reality of what My Racehorse brings to the table that no one else does is the fact that you can come in with $100 bill and have that opportunity to be part of it. As far as you feeling as if you're a big time owner, I think what I would probably say to that is the fact that you're part of a big partnership. And we've got owners that could range from anywhere from 200 in one horse to all the way up to beyond 4,000, 4,500. And I think the horse that took us on the most magical ride, of course, was Authentic with the late, great B. Wayne Hughes. There was an opportunity that presented itself there were 2 horses in his stable at the time, and it came down to, all right, which way do we go? And thankfully, Wayne Hughes gave us some option there, and the rest is history. He went on to become Horse of the Year in Authentic, and it's amazing to think that it's only been a couple of years. Pandemic has kind of literally kind of just drawn the lives out of a lot of us trying to get back from a business standpoint. But I think the idea with My Racehorse to make you feel and give you that winning experience as an owner and be part of something. Now, if you want to take a few more dollars and take it to that next level, that's where a syndicate like Edge may come into play. I guess you get better rate of return for the amount of money putting in. I don't think you can come in with $100 and expect to come out to be a millionaire.
Right. So each of them, Nick, basically, has a different way of doing their business model, right? So
correct.
One's taking a little bit more money, probably has a lot less owners, and My Racehorse is taking on a lot more of them. And is there a difference? What's the difference between the two?
The difference is that with My Racehorse, you are involved in buying in a micro share, whereas with Edge, you are actually a syndicate partner in a sense that you are a capital investor and you must come in accredited. Obviously, there are certain parameters and checks of the balances and boxes they do. Not just any guy can walk in off of the street. I mean, the one thing that I can appreciate most about My Racehorse and Edge is that, everything gets regulated through the SEC. It's not as if there are other syndicates out there that I care not to mention, but they don't regulate. And they can and are equipped to go ahead and do as, say, for example, My Racehorse and Edge would do, but they simply don't because they feel they don't need to. And I guess some have survived and advanced for so many years that maybe it doesn't matter. But that's, for me, what it boils down to. If you're a shareholder in My Racehorse, you're an owner in a particular horse, you want to see the books, or you're involved in Edge racing, transparency is there. There's no cloud, so to speak. Questions are being asked. I mean, we routinely have chat rooms. We've obviously had town halls where the partners have been given the opportunity to, ask questions, ask the hard questions. And I think that our CEO and founder, Michael Behrens, he's been the best at being accessible to that.
All right. Well, I'm definitely going to be picking your brain for more. And if people want to invest any money in either one of those, the Edge or My Racehorse, where can they go?
Well, it's very straightforward. I think you can just go to myracehorse.com. There are ways that you can reach a customer service. I mean, if you're at a nearby racetrack, if you're out at Keeneland, for example, over the next few days, there are representatives of My Racehorse. We have our operations manager, Joe Mishak, our West Coast liaison manager, as I'd mentioned, Joe Moran, who also manages Edge. And of course, if you ever see me at the track, feel free to stop by. But myracehorse.com, easy means in which to go ask any questions that you may have. But it's definitely a fun process, and the events they have at the tracks, I think they're nothing short of exceptional.
All right, let's get into this race. So we got the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff, fillies and mares 3 and up, grade 1 race. Of course, I've got EquinEdge up. I know that I remember when I first brought EquinEdge up to you, you thought I was a lunatic, but then you're like, okay, well, I have a horse here. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
We were in the TVG studios, and I came to you, and I'm like, hey, check this out. I was trying to pimp this thing to anybody who will listen to me. You know how I am. And I bring it up, and you're like, well, I got a horse running in this race. Tell me about it. I'm like, wow. There it is. You're going to win the race. And then you said to me, well, who's the second horse? And I said, well, it's this one here. And it came in. Did it not come in, Dave Weaver, ice cold?
No, you're spot on. I mean, it's been, I'll be honest. I remember I had done a show from the Handicap. So it was when Cash was born, and my son's 12 now. And that was just a few years into when you had really taken a big swing here. And I mean, I have to commend you and your product. The other point being is, which you mentioned, the fact that for users for EquinEdge, you have the ability to use the intercom button. I will tell you that, like anything else, whether we're taking Uber, we're taking Lyft, or we're dealing with an airline, the one thing that really kind of rides under the skin is when you don't have the ability to get that customer service that you need. So any questions that may come up, the intercom button is there at your disposal. And for users of EquinEdge, it's awesome. It's a great product. I know that for me personally, when I'm in kind of a hustle mode, and I'm not able to like construct a pick 5 ticket, that's the other point. The ticket generator. It's one of my favorite aspects to it, because the fact that you can generate a ticket through EquinEdge, but you can also integrate your thoughts and your rhythms as well. So this is a curious race, Scotty, as far as the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Unfortunately, there's not an abundance of value to be had.
No.
But the thing to consider is the fact that when you look at the late pick 4, this is a key leg. The second leg, the pick 5, of course, begins in race 7. Again, I think it might be the opportunity to kind of take a hard stand on someone here. And I'm having difficulty with it. But noting your pace ratings, I'm with you 100% with Society. I think as far as the GSR rate, a lot of it points to Society here. I don't think the morning line is going to stand at 6-1, just for the sake of a lot of folks that I've been speaking to are all over Society in the Distaff, just for the sake of the fact that on paper and according to the program here, she looks to be the speed.
Look at her, right? I mean, so this is the thing. We can overthink this, but when she's, first of all, she's lightly raced, right? And she's winning the last couple of races very nicely. I mean, the cotillion over at Parks, but when you look at these figures, this pace number is so dominant. Now, of course, Nest, Malathat, I mean, these are amazing horses. Search Results is incredible. And
Right.
Clariere throughout the last race, but how do you ignore the top win percentage, top pace number by far, and then the top GSR also has a very good SOR? I mean, I personally think I'm not using Clariere, although I'm mad respect and Search Results mad respect. I think Nest and Malathat are a different level, and I probably wouldn't even use Society if it wasn't for that pace advantage. The horse has a decent class, but that pace advantage is so overwhelming that I think that when that happens, and you know this as good as I do, when you have that kind of pace advantage, but plus you have some class, what happens is it takes other horses out of their game.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're kind of in chase mode, and then they've used themselves a little bit to get closer to Society, who probably they're going to be thinking, okay, well, this horse is 2 or 3 lengths in front. They're going to be thinking that, she's going to come back to them, but she just doesn't come back.
Well, I think the other point is that, some will kind of point to the idea that Search Results, could essentially be the bumper for the pace of Society. I don't honestly think that the Chad Brown, Flavian Pratt, they obviously know what Society's capable of. I mean, the issue that you have for this particular race, and when you date back to 1984 with the inaugural running of the Distaff, since that time, there have been 10 3-year-olds. So immediately you're like, well, what's a 3-year-old going to do against older horses? Well, I got news for you. The 2 parts of the best top contenders in this race are 3-year-olds. And It just so happens that you've got multiple contending daughters of Curlin in this race, in both the 6 and the 1, obviously, with Malathat.
That's right. That's right.
So that being said, I think it really comes down to who's the hot horse. The hardest part is that there are many hot horses, because Malathat has gone back-to-back. She's 3 for 3 at Keeneland. And what's also interesting is that the 3 key horses here, they all own victories over the track, whereas the others either haven't raced there or they haven't earned a win. So it really does appear to me, anyhow, to come down to those 3. Now, as far as Clariere is concerned, not a big fan of her most recent race in August. And, I kind of dealt and dug and tried to do a little bit of research on, did she bleed that day? I know one thing, she absolutely threw a fit in the starting gate. And that's not something she's going to even come close to near doing on Saturday. She thinks she's going to be able to compete. But it's actually 3 daughters of Curlin that are in this race.
$3. Yeah, incredible. Okay, well, what happened with Clariere was very fractious in the gate. And then right when she was coming out of the gate, she bit her tongue. So I do really think that you can throw that race out. But when you look at Malathat and you look at this, I mean, $265,000 earned per start at Keeneland. Clearly loves Keeneland. 13 starts combined, $212,000 average. But there's 2 things that are glaring here: $265,000 earned per start at Keeneland, and 7 starts at 9 furlongs. Sarge, $258,000 average. So when you take the average of the dirt, but then you take the 9 furlongs in the Keeneland and compare that, it's all lining up to a massive effort here, I think.
It's amazing the statistic. I obviously been a man of being at the sales. I've been a countless sales this year. I've been essentially to all the 2-year-old in training sales, in addition to most recently coming back from phasing at Kentucky. But there's Chuck Browner. He's stepping right up. Oh, many horse. The first horse he ever bought in my race was Authentic. That's the hard part. When you step up, you invest in a program. It's like winning the Super Bowl. I mean, you obviously won the Kentucky Derby, you won the Breeders' Cup Classic, and you became Horse of the Year. But that's really what the ride's all about. But as they say, it's all downhill from there. It's tough to top that, and you're going to continue to try and bring those horses to the table. But getting back to the race, Scotty, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the first 3/16 quarter of a mile. I mean, just based on the fact that we know that the horse that obviously we think is clearing speed in society has one way to go. I just hope that Florent Geroux, because this will be the second time that he's ridden this Daughter of Gunrunner, I just hope he doesn't get cute, because if for whatever reason he decides to take a little bit of a hold and search results is in the fold, but don't discount Nest. I mean, she in her own right has a wicked turn of foot. It really boils down to a rider's race. And you can say, well, isn't that the case for all in many of the weekend? Irad Ortiz, who climbs aboard Nest, his over-under this weekend, it has to be at least 5 races.
Well, I think the tell here is when you look at Florent Geroux, I mean, he did go gate to wire. I think other than the maiden breaker, I think everyone's understanding that this horse wants the lead for its best effort. I was really impressed with the Cotillion effort. That was a nice effort there. It was a decent field. I mean, look at the SOR. It's an 82, but look at this. This might be the highest current race SOR I've ever seen. I was so excited for this race, even not as much as obviously the Classic, but I'm telling you, a 92 on the SOR. I mean, you've been using this now for a few years.
Right.
Have you ever seen a current race SOR of 90? The Kentucky Derby last year didn't have an SOR of 92.
Well, and I think that, obviously when you stare down the barrel of the field, and I ended up making Nest my top selection just because I guess it came down to me as far as the jockeys are concerned. Am I an Irad guy or am I a Florent guy? I mean, I think in this particular case, Irad is on a Lethal Weapon in Nest. And I know that there was the talk of her potentially going into the Breeders' Cup Classic, which I commend Todd Pletcher, Rapoli, Eclipse, and partners for not doing it, because they've already announced that she's going to come back for a 4-year-old campaign. Amazing. Which I think is awesome. Because when you look at what she's done, I mean, she's never been off the board in 10 starts. If she were to step up here and take home top prize, her earnings are going to go into the 3 million range, close to anyway. So I had to kind of decide. And when you look at from an exotic standpoint, you say, all right, well, what are you going to do in the pick 5? Obviously with the pick 5, with these types of races, am I going to single Nest? I think I'm going to be committed to do so because the fact that I need coverage in other races. I hate to do it based on what we're seeing here on your program and EquinEdge, because a lot of it points to pace strength. Now, as far as the EE picks, the double E picks, bear with me on Nest. Malathot, I think she's going to go over bet just by way of, how sharp she has been. But I'm just not convinced, Scotty. When you look back at the field she beat last out, 5-horse field, Army Wife, I mean, she's made $335,000, but she's beat nobody this year. No. And then you look to the fact that the 3rd place finisher played. I mean, she hasn't beat anybody. She struggled to beat Search Results, and Search Results is really not in our conversation here.
No, I respect this horse, but this just look at Search Results would be been in the money in all 11 starts, $1.4 million. I mean, this is an amazing 4-year-old filly. But when you're talking about Malathat and Nest, I'm not putting Society in there by any stretch. It's just that this horse is lightly raced and has a ton of speed, and that pace number and top win percentage and top GSR, you can't ignore that. Or one of the top GSRs, excuse me. You can't ignore that. So it's amazing. Search Results would probably be the 1 to 2 favorite in probably 8 out of 10 of these races. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I think it really comes down to, as a 4-year-old, is she running the same numbers? When you kind of look to her effort in the personal lens. And, the other thing is the idea of distance. As far as your program is concerned, what's the horse that stands out most from a distance perspective?
Malathat to me.
Okay. And obviously I think the horse that's most challenged as far as the conversation horses are search results. I had a gentleman call me today on Blue Stripe. I try on a championship day, I try and judge the competition they've had. I mean, it's much like a team that makes it to the Super Bowl, for example, and you look at their strength of record, and then you take into account, who they beat at the most in crucial places. So that's why I feel to the likes of a Blue Stripe, maybe relegate underneath. Secret Oath, I think she's had better races. The fact that she's, coming in on a 4-race losing streak, it seems like the whole Preakness experiment has kind of, I guess, taken a little bit of punch out of her game. But if you believe, by all means. Clairiere, I don't like the idea that she's coming back off that layoff. You mentioned she bit her tongue. She freaked out in the gate. Yeah. Can she fire fresh? Sure she can. It's Steve Asmussen. I mean, you look at, trainers and conditioners who have won this race. What's really interesting is when you go through the history of the Breeders' Cup Distaff, this is a race that Steve Asmussen has never won. What does that mean? Or actually won back in 2014. What does that mean? It's a race that he hasn't had as much success in as other races. But Bill Mott, 5-time winner. I have to think that in this case, a 3-year-old is going to win. But Nesta is going to be the horse that I'm going to have to go with by way of the fact that I've got Irad Ortiz, and he can pretty much aim and shoot whenever he decides to.
And I got one more question for you in this race, and that is that when you're a 3-year-old, if it's the end of the year, a lot of people believe that 3-year-olds at the end of the year, I mean, they're essentially 4 years old. Does it really matter, especially if they faced 3 and up before? I guess if they've only faced 3-year-olds, it could matter. But I mean, when you're talking about even like when you're talking about Nest, I mean, she faced 3 and up last time out, right, and just absolutely smoked them over at Belmont.
It definitely means something, but I would have to say that, when you look at the field she beat, you can make the same argument for her as we've just done, say, for example, on Malatot. I don't think that grade 1 spinster was that hot of a race. Malatot went on to win by 5 1/4. I kind of get the feeling that Malatot could be a horse for course, but when you consider the fact she's won over several different tracks, Churchill, she's won at Aqueduct, she's won at Belmont, she almost won here at Del Mar, winning the Distaff last year, but she's far and away a better horse now. But as far as the 3-year-old and upward, I think you have to take a look at the visual and how she did it. Now, on the flip side of things, when you look at the search results, as she kind of transgressed into her 4-year-old year, I personally don't feel that she's the same horse. Now, she came up just a half length short in the grade 1 personal ensign. Was it because of distance? I don't know. I don't like the idea that she did not race in the month of September, October. The fact that Society comes off a race in September, timing for Society at 5 weeks is spot on. Malatot coming back in less than 4 weeks, I think is a bit of a squeeze play. As far as Nest coming back within 4 weeks, I mean, she galloped in the grade 2 Beldame.
Sure.
Beldame. So I think the fact that Malatot is in this race, it's going to help you if you're on Society, which it sounds like you are, and it's going to help me on Nest. I think Nest is not going to be a pencil below 8 to 5, a penny below 8 to 5. And I think Society, been a wise guy selection. I think it's going to be probably 4 to 1, 9 to 2, but that's plenty of value in a race like this.
Yeah, I was going to say 5 to 1, and I would agree with you. How are you supposed to beat Nest and Malathat? How are you supposed to beat them when you haven't run since August? I think it's just going to be very difficult. I don't know what the issues were, but I'm sure Chad Brown's been, trying to figure all that out and try to get this horse up. But to beat the best fillies and mares in the business right now, and not have run since August when you're probably already against it is going to be really tough to beat. Nick, I swear I could talk to you forever because you're just that good and fun to talk to. We got a bunch of people in waiting. So thank you so much for coming on. I know you've got a lot going on right now, and we really appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you, Scotty. And again, it's going to be a big couple of days. Best of luck to you and the BCBC. I'm always rooting for you, my man. In fact, in July, when I'd done that NHC out at Los Alamitos, I was so excited because I was able to get the churn money. And the first person I could think of was you. And kudos to your product, EquinEdge, and your passion. You put it out there. You know what? You put your money where your mouth is, and that's something that can be said not for a lot in this game. And we appreciate you, brother.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarge. I appreciate that. We'll see you soon. Okay, you take care of yourself.
Shout out to DJ Decoy. Appreciate the production. And I appreciate you guys thinking of me. Good luck this week.
All right. Nick Hines, the Sarge, has been our first guest, and just hoorah, been just a top guy. Love Nick, and just always so generous with his time and such a good guy. And I worked with him at TVG, and he was just the best. So our next guest, well, so long story short, I remember I don't think I had been interviewed at all ever. And I was down at Del Mar, and somebody asked me to come on and be interviewed by a reporter at TVG. And so this kid comes along and he's got this thick hair and all this stuff. I'm like, he's interviewing me? Not that I could interview him. It wasn't that. I was just like, he's just so young. And he hosts a weekly podcast called That's What G Said. What up, brother? How are you, Gino?
Doing well, man. That was a lot of fun. I know the hair's a little shorter now, but it used to definitely be all over the place, crazy.
Yeah.
When you get a little older, you get a little more mature. You get a little calmer now. I've got a kid. I got a 3-year-old kid that's going to be 3 next week. That's keeping me. That's getting the gray start to come in the beard now. We didn't have the gray when I interviewed you all those years back. So
no, you carried me too. I can tell you, and I remember this. I was an absolute nervous wreck, and you just carried me through it. And you are the ultimate professional at a very young age, by the way, reporting like that for TVG. Such a big responsibility, and not only a great reporter, but a broadcaster, analyst, host. I know you're working with a lot of tracks around the country right now, giving your daily plays and stuff. But you're not a one-trick pony. You deal with like all sorts of sports and things like that. But I know that people would really be interested in knowing about the podcast that you host called. It's called What G Said.
That's what G said. That's what G said.
That's what G said.
And every week there's at least one episode a week. Most of the time there's 2, and there's always going to be an episode that comes out right before the weekend as a big preview for whatever big races are happening. So most weeks it'll be, if it's Santa Anita that has a couple stakes race, or maybe Keeneland has a few stakes races, or Belmont, wherever it is, we'll talk about those, usually multiple tracks for Friday and for Saturday. And then we'll also get into whatever's going on in sports. We have previews of every single football game, betting preview, talk about how the lines moved, fantasy, DFS stuff. We'll get into game analysis. I love just like watching the replays of the races. I love to watch the film of every game the next day. NFL Game Pass has the feature where you could take all the commercials out and watch a game in like 15 or 20 minutes. So it's really nice. You can go through a full game, just play, and kind of pick up stuff like you might pick up in a race replay.
Wait, don't you? I think I've seen that. Don't you just put in? It just gives you highlights, right?
Well, no, if you go to NFL.com, they actually have a Game Pass feature where you can watch the film in different ways. Like you can watch the full broadcast on a replay. You can watch the coach's film, or they'll just take all of the commercials out. So it goes literally from play, 2 seconds after the play, it goes right to the next play, then the next play. So you can watch every play of the game in like 25, 30 minutes, which is really nice, instead of spending a couple hours fast forwarding. Stop. Oh, wait, I went too far. I got to stop, rewind back a little bit. Got to go. Right. So, that's a lot of fun. I mean, I was someone who grew up playing a lot of sports. I loved talking about a lot of sports. I've been very lucky to be a play-by-play announcer and call sports like baseball, basketball, football, wrestling, pro wrestling. I've gotten to announce and be a ring announcer at pro wrestling events too. So that was one of the things at TVG. I loved working at TVG, loved getting to cover the races, but where I am now, I get to still cover the races and work with Santa Anita, work with Louisiana Downs, Sam Houston, but I also get to talk about some of the other things that I have big interest in too. So you get the best of both worlds for me right now.
So how can people find you? How can they find your picks or get to you? Is there a website?
Yeah, well, podcast is anywhere you download your podcast. It's called That's What G Said. So if you subscribe, if you're on iTunes or Google or anywhere like that, you can download it. Probably the best place to follow me is on Twitter, because I'm very active on Twitter, and the account is It's Me, Gino B. I love to post all of the stuff I have going on there. I host a lot of videos and live streams for different websites also, and I usually try to put all of that stuff there. So if you give me a follow, It's Me, Gino B. We'll be able to get you set up for whatever you need, whatever sport. If you're in Marvel, Star Wars, we have deep dive recaps of the TV shows, of the movies. So yeah, I'm a nerd, and I just go crazy because I know there are some other nerds out there that love to think like-minded.
Okay, so let's we got that out of the way. Let's really look at this race. Now, my first question is, there are a lot of people that believe that the best bet of this entire weekend is Modern Games. Do you have that same opinion?
Well, what's your definition of a best bet? I will be shocked if he is like anything over 2-1. Honestly, I thought 7-2 was probably a very generous morning line for him.
Right.
I would be very surprised if he doesn't have like a 9-5 or an 8-5 next to his name. He isn't a favorite I'm trying to completely chuck out and beat. I don't think he's a necessarily standout cinch, can't be beat, but from a talking point, the race absolutely 100% starts with him. And a lot of people kind of know him because of what happened last year with Modern Games when he was scratched, but then he wasn't scratched, but then he was scratched, but then he wasn't scratched. And then he ended up running in a race. And it was funny just watching that race. We all knew what was going to happen. You knew he was going to win just to cause the chaos. And he ended up getting like a perfect trip. He was sitting in like the third flight, always looked like he was a winner, always traveling well. And then of course, all the chaos there when a bunch of people were like, what? I had him. He didn't win. I don't know what's going on. And
that was nuts.
Yeah.
Absolutely
it was
nuts.
Couldn't even make it up if you tried. Really,
no, never
so
seen
far-fetched.
We have this horse at 9-5. What I was kind of surprised because it seems like our system, our algorithms really kind of lean towards domestic horses instead of some of the foreign horses. And I was really kind of blown away by the 9-5 EquinEdge morning line. And then Annapolis, I'd like to talk about that one a bit because I know the connections love this horse. They've always loved this horse. It seems to be coming into his own right now. You know much about this horse?
Yeah, I like him a lot too in here, Scotty. I think it's a really good spot for him. He might get bet a little bit too. And if he is in that like 6-1-ish range, where I think you guys had him sort of pegged, that feels probably right. If he's higher than that, even better. But, you dive into his overall career. He's run 5 times. He's been beat twice. One of the races when he got beat, it was at Penn National. It was in his first start off of the bench. He hadn't raced for about 8 months. And it was a racetrack that came up really, really soft. The turf course was brutally soft. And he got beat by an 88-1 shot that day. A horse who kind of made a middle move and then just kept going. And Annapolis loomed up. He looked like he was going to go by. And I think the combination of the turf, the layoff, a few different things. His only other loss came to a horse named Nation's Pride, who's going to be one of the top 3 choices in the Breeders' Cup Turf.
Oh, yeah.
So, you go through the rest of his form. This is a horse who's always been very good. They've always thought very highly of him. And I like that he's getting a little bit more tactical as he's gotten older. I think that's a sign of just maturity, of comfortability. But I also like the fact that he's not a need the lead type. I've actually seen him get shuffled back, have to overcome trips that were less than ideal. And he might be the kind of horse who can just kind of work his own trip out now because he's becoming a little more handy. I think of the US-based horses, he's the top contender. I like him most of any of the horses in here. And if he can sit in front of Modern Games, I think that's how you have to beat a horse like that, right? If you're going to beat these horses who have a really nice turn of foot, you think you probably want to get the jump on them, and maybe you can take advantage of some tactical speed.
And I think there's going to be some speed in here as well, Gino. You got Beyond Brilliant, who I don't personally think can win the race because the class seems a little bit light. Smooth Like Straight is an interesting horse, but certainly a horse that needs a lead, and I think Beyond Brilliant's pretty fast. So you could see some pace in here. I really am a big fan of Regal Glory, and this one's got 12 wins, 6 second-place finishes. Chad Brown, Jose Ortiz. I think this one can run a lot bigger than people. You might even get 10-1 on this horse.
Yeah, she's interesting from a price standpoint because I think that's the real key to her. She's just done so little wrong recently. And if you just dive into her last 2 races in particular, you can make a legitimate excuse. She was chasing her stablemate last time out in Italian, who's very quick. She's tough to run down when she gets loose. In Italian will be one of the major players in the filly and mare turf. They're going to have to run her down in there. So it's no shame in being defeated by Regal Glory. Now, she certainly trips out, right? And that's what's nice about her. Like, she feels like the type of horse who's kind of going to be in that range, maybe just behind 3 or 4 horses up front. She can sit right behind them, maybe get the jump on some of the deeper closers there. She will likely have to face, the best field that she's faced. She's facing the boys in here. She did face the boys a couple starts back, and she was a runner-up in the 4-star Dave there. So she'll get the class test, but what's nice about her, she'll certainly be in the right spot. If you like her, she should give you a nice run for your money. And, I don't think she'll be way out of it. I don't think she'll be right on the lead. And in here, that feels like where you want to be.
So, Order of Australia, this horse in this race last year was the big 6-5 favorite and completely bombed, and they're bringing her back. I don't know why they would do that. I mean, Aidan O'Brien is, knows what he's doing, obviously, but he's won 13 Breeders' Cup races. So do you give a chance at all to Order of Australia? I mean, he's trying again.
Order of Australia came here and prepped in the same race, was behind Annapolis and Ivar, got squeezed back a little bit at the start, but actually recovered pretty well and was inside, was sitting in a good spot, was up to just about 3 lengths off, just kind of tried to follow Annapolis, and Annapolis got the jump. And that's just sort of what is concerning to me about a horse like Order of Australia. I don't know if he's quite as handy as some of the tactical horses who I might lean towards, like an Annapolis, or a horse you mentioned, like Regal Glory, who might be more tactical. I don't know if I like him, if he's sitting on even terms and he has to try to close with a horse like maybe a Dreamloper or a Modern Games. I'm just sort of worried about the trip I'm trying to project for Order of Australia in here. I think he might be sort of up against it.
See, what I'm seeing, though, at least if you look at our pace numbers, it's the 7 and 5 are going to be clearly on the lead. There's really no other pace in this race. So now it's a matter of maybe some of the class. So if you sort the strength of race, the SOR, you can kind of see who's, carrying some of the class. If you look at our SOR over here, strength of race for the surface and distance, look at Regal Glory. In 11 tries, I know it's a mare here facing the boys, but 5 wins, 4 second-place finishes. I mean, certainly deserves a look. And then you look at Order of Australia, really only 1 win in 8 tries, a decent strength of race. But again, I think this is really pointing towards possibly Regal Glory running really good again against the boys. The 3 horse. Let's talk about this 3, Dreamloper. I'm hearing some things that maybe this horse has some talent. Don't know much about the connections. 6-1 on the odds makers morning line, but EquinEdge morning line 20-1. Any idea about this horse?
Yeah, I like her. I would like her to be a little sort of what your odds are saying, right? I would like her to be a little bit more of a price. Like at 10-1, I would feel a little bit better about her. If she is in like the 5 or 6-1 range, that might be short. But I will say, I don't think this particular race came up as strong as maybe a normal Breeders' Cup mile. I don't think the turf or the filly and mare turf even all came up as strong. They're contentious, right? They're competitive. I don't know if there's necessarily overwhelming standouts, but I don't think 3 or 4. Normally we get, a few shippers that really, really look good and overwhelming. And in here, it does feel like a couple of the US-based horses are serious contenders, because one of the other shippers is Kinross, and I don't really know how far Kinross wants to go. And Kinross might take a lot of money for a horse who's done a lot of their best work going shorter. There's a synthetic win way back when a few years ago, but that was against much lesser on the synthetic. There's a couple of good efforts going like 7 and 7.5. I just don't know if that's a true miler there. And that'll probably be a horse that takes a good amount of money. I'm a little bit cold on.
So, I had mixed feelings about this horse. I like the fact that Frankie Dettori is above aboard this horse, right? 8 wins in 21 tries. And what a lot of people maybe don't know, and I think it's important to tell, is that a lot of these European horses, when a lot of the domestic owners and breeders and pinhookers are trying to bring horses from Europe, and what they're looking for is horses that go 6 furlongs or 7 furlongs is what they're looking for, because they make great milers, maybe going a mile and an eighth. They can go longer. So when you're looking at these types of horses, don't let 6 furlongs or 7 furlongs scare you when the current distance is 8 furlongs. I promise you that. Like, I actually like this horse a little bit more than you. I mean, look at this horse's done.
His class absolutely fits. And visually, when you watch, it doesn't really seem like a mile will be an issue. I'm just a little bit worried that when you watch a horse sprinting and they look impressive, like they can run all day, sometimes it's just a little bit different than when you're actually facing milers or more distance horses, because he might be a better distance horse than a lot of those sprinters he was facing. I worry if he'll have that same look late, but yeah, I mean, I think the same I can kind of feel with him than with Dreamloper. If Modern Games gets hit and they float up a little bit and they're like 8-1, I can feel like they're playable for me. If
Right.
they
Not to beat a dead horse, but I was watching some of the European horses and some of the races, and there's groups of 16, 17, 18, and they're just loping along, Gino.
Yeah.
And they're within 5 lengths of each other, and there's 20 of them, and then all of a sudden they're all coming down the stretch, and then boom, letting out a gear, and next you know they're sprinting, and who's the best sprinter? And plus they're going the opposite way. I mean, we're the ones going counterclockwise, but to come in here and all of a sudden just, crawl and then make a mad dash for home. These horses in Europe that are running longer, they never do well here. But this type of horse, King Ross, I like want to implore people to make sure that they use this horse possibly. Now, has to have the class. It looks like it has some, but these are the types of prototypical horses that people in the States are looking for in Europe for sure.
What do we do with the horse like, Domestic Spending, who this would be one of the all-time training jobs ever to get this horse, right? And then if he was in, first off, it's a tough distance for him because he's kind of a tweener. Like, he's one of those horses who 1.5 miles is too far for him. 1 mile is probably too short for him. He's like a good 1.125 1.25 horse, but there isn't a Breeders' Cup race there for him. So he's got to kind of be in between. And then you're talking about a horse who we haven't seen run in, 15 months, 6, around there.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he has the widest post of all. Like, if we were in the middle of the field at 5, at least maybe we can say, okay, if he's ready, maybe he can come running. But if he does it from out wide at out 14 off of this kind of a layoff, like, that is just, it'll be without my money, because I think he'll still, still get bet off of reputation. He was when he went to the bench at that point, he was like the best U.S. turf horse then. And so people probably will still remember him, throw a few bucks on him. But yeah, if he does it impressively, I'll be wiping my hands and moving on to the pick 3, because I'll have been knocked out of whatever races
everything. If he wins, I'm knocked out of everything. I mean, you're facing some of the top milers, and you're going to come here and be off a year, 12 or 15, 16 months. And on top of that, you draw the 14 hole.
Yeah.
Let's see the speed for this horse. The speed as far as pace goes. I mean, now she's got to come from way back. She is 2 for 2 at the distance, but no. I mean, I think it would be a great win if this horse was to get like 3rd or 4th.
Oh, I know.
Right?
That would be impressive at all. So she just feels like she'll be, or he feels like he'll be overlaid in this spot, and just for his fair chances for winning, because it's a connections play too. Like, a lot of players that may just be playing like some of these connections that they know, some novice money that's out there too. I think he'll be a little undervalued in that spot. And I would prefer a horse like Ivar, who's going to be twice his price. Like, if you're looking to use another horse, I don't know if Ivar can win, but what's kind of fun about him, he was 3rd and 4th in the last 2 Breeders' Cup miles. He showed up and run huge races in those. And what's cool about this year for Ivar is he actually has 2 races off the bench under his belt. So he may be a little bit better. He's kind of been his own worst enemy, because he's an older horse that can't really stay on the track all that much. He seems like he races a couple times. It takes a lot out of him, and then he needs a lot of time off, and he comes back. If you're looking for a 15-1 type horse, he was the runner-up to Modern Games at Woodbine. But, the only problem is, if you're looking at him from a win candidate, I mean, Modern Games absolutely dusted him, like absolutely handled him in that race.
So look, I've got the 2021 race last time, and Ivar, who got 3rd, had the 14 post. Look at that.
I know. Even with the post and not a whole lot of racing under his belt throughout the year, he ran very, very well in a race when Smooth Like Straight ran well, because there wasn't that much speed in that race too. So you could do worse off for a long shot that you're trying to throw in, exactas, tries, supers like that.
Well, and look at this too. I think it's important to note now. I don't think blowout. Well, blowout had a look. Look at Smooth Like Straight, who's in this in here as well. Got second. Look at that.
Yeah, and that's the thing with him.
Yeah.
He doesn't win very much anymore.
No,
but he's like, he reminds me a little bit of Hot Rod Charlie in like,
yeah,
he doesn't ever, he gets trips sometimes where you're like, oh, Smooth Like Straight's going to win easy. And then he kind of hangs and then he fights back after, like he doesn't want to get beat ever, but he's never going to go on and win easily. He, as an under horse, he's not, you could do worse for him than him. But I think you were kind of hitting on the point of like how this race shapes up. I don't know if he's going to be lone speed in here, loose on the front end. He may be dealing with some other pressure in here and like Beyond Brilliant and him go at it. That if the one of the two of them were in here, I'd probably upgrade them a little bit more. But I think the presence of the two of them hurt both of their chances on the win end.
I think we got to be careful with Smooth Like Straight, but I got to bring this up because I found this. Remember Mo Forza, right?
Yeah.
So if you look down here in 2019, I won that day the Santa Anita tournament, and I was behind. And Mo Forza was a maiden, went off at like 8-5, and I had like $3,600 left in my bankroll. Now I think this horse, I forget which race it was. Maybe he ran even in the last race. And I put all 3,600 to win on this horse, and I ended up winning that Santa Anita tournament.
Awesome!
It was a great story.
Hell
That was a
yeah.
great story. Listen, I've enjoyed the hell out of having you on. You were amazing. Everybody
Anytime
I know enjoyed you. I'm seeing the chat, and they're just loving you to death. And so thank you so much for coming on, Gino. It was overdue, and we're going to have you on soon. I hope you'll come back.
Anytime you need, Scotty. Looking forward to it, and I'll get you on my show too. You have a great product there. You're very, very sharp, and hoorah to the Sarge, and good luck to everyone else who's joining you.
All right. We'll see you, Gino Bacola. All right. So our next guest, surprised, gave me a text and said, hey, if you want me, I can come on. I'm like, yeah, wow. Who wouldn't want you? Of course we want you. One of my favorite people in horse racing, especially too, just been around the game a very, very long time. Of course, works for FanDuel reporting. She's actually doing the breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. You've probably seen her as well. She's in Kentucky right now. Let's welcome in Christina Blacker. Hey, Christina.
Hey, Scotty. Great to be with you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Good, good. To be honest, it's late here. So I'm like finishing my studying, sending in my selections, and wanted to jump in before I head off to bed.
Well, so glad you did. You've been doing these. You've been really active on Twitter, as a matter of fact. Kind of talk about how you came up with these videos you've been doing. They've been really funny.
We've done a lot of TikToks this year. I did a few last year. I've kind of like tried to figure out how to relate some of those trends to horse racing, because I mean, if you look at it, it's how so many young people are getting their news these days, and kind of keeping their fingers on the pulse of what's going on. And I read a study not long ago that more people are searching for different topics on TikTok than they are in Google these days. So we just had to have a bigger presence on TikTok for FanDuel, for horse racing in general. And so we've tried to have a little fun with it, and it has been fun. And we've got a few more coming up this weekend. So yeah, that's definitely been a big part of this week. The breakfast at the Breeders' Cup show has been so fun. I've loved being on the desk, having more responsibility this year, being able to offer some insight with regard to the works, and hopefully it's been helpful.
Well, it's a lot of fun to watch, I can tell you that. And not only are you making it fun, but you also bring a lot of knowledge into, and you know this game very, very well. So I really applaud you for all the things that you're doing. I mean, like you just get better and better every single year. I mean, just from the beginning and watching. And of course, you're very knowledgeable, not just on handicapping, but you understand horses and all that, your dad being an ex-jockey and stuff like that. So it's really neat to see. I mean, I remember when, God, I was like 21 years old. I remember seeing you, like, I don't know how tall you were. I mean, it's crazy how all of a sudden how we're the adults now with kids, right? Well, I'm about to be a grandfather. I mean, you've got 3 girls, right?
This year, I'm not a baby anymore. It's catching up.
It's weird, right? I mean, we're used to being the baby, and all of a sudden now we're like the adults and have to be responsible. I'm not used to that.
I also don't feel, sometimes I feel like, getting there and making progress, whatnot. But then I realized Drew Fleming, who's the president of the Breeders' Cup, is younger than me. I mean, that's kind of frightening. Like, what am I doing if he's a president of the Breeders' Cup and he's younger?
How do you balance being a mom? I mean, you've got 3 girls, correct?
3 girls. Yeah, they're 9, 7, and 5.
How do you balance that? I mean, how do you do all that you do? You travel. I mean, obviously, with Dan Blacker being a trainer and your husband, and I mean, you guys are such an amazing couple. Where's the support you get? I mean, how the heck do you do that?
It's a lot. I mean, I won't lie. It's a lot to keep track of. I'm very lucky to have Dan as a partner and someone that's just as busy as I am, but also, such a teammate in all of it. I've been gone a long time. This trip is 10 days. This is the longest I've been gone for a long time.
Wow.
And I don't know if you can see it, but I'll pull up, he calls it my set list. So you know how the trainers, they leave like a set list for their owners and whatnot. Oh, it's not going to really show. I have a 15-page set list of instructions that I've left at home for the 10 days that I was gone. Just where they're all going. They're all in sports. They're all doing their things. Like everybody has a schedule, but you're just in 2 places at once all the time. I wouldn't wish being a working mom on my worst enemy. Honestly, I don't feel like I'm a very good mom all the time. And I don't feel like I'm a good employee all the time. You're so torn. And I think if you're someone that is a bit of a perfectionist, you don't ever feel like you're doing either one as well as you could.
Well, not only that, I mean, you got to support Dan and I imagine that must be a lot of fun for you when you guys have a really good horse and the horse wins and stuff. Like, tell everybody what that's kind of like, because I mean, to me, I've owned many racehorses in my life, and it's just the best feeling in the world when you win. Especially, I can't even imagine if you're the trainer as well, and you're so, you're so close to the best, if you will.
It is really fun. It's emotional. It's such a journey to go on with every horse. I have such an appreciation for all the horsemen that we're talking about on FanDuel all the time, because I know what it takes, and I know the ups and the downs of the business and of the game, and how it can really get you down. And as a trainer, there's so many highs, but there's some sort of little bit of bad news almost every day. You might have that chooses to go with another trainer. You might have a horse that needs to go on the layoff. You might have a horse get claimed away from you. You might not get the jockey you want in a particular race. There's a lot of kind of little disappointments along the way. And I think you just have to learn to be level and learn to appreciate the wins when they come. But I do think that we're lucky to have each other in that we both understand the sacrifice it takes to be involved in this game, and looking for those kind of rewarding feelings of winning and knowing you did your job correctly is what we both kind of strive for all the time. And I've learned so much being married to him and just watching what he does and learning through his experiences. I think it's made me so much better at my job because I really understand and live what it takes to get a horse ready for a race.
Well, I can only imagine too that when Dan's got a horse running and you guys have a horse running, that, I mean, you're probably hiding from Dave Weaver all the time, right? I mean, he's probably like, hey, the horse is going to win, right? I can imagine he's just bothering the crap out of you, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's like, everybody's that guy at some point. I just kind of do one of these, like,
right,
but
exactly.
I'm not in the barn. Like I'm not Maggie Wolfino. I love Maggie to death, and she's right there in the barn and she's breezing those horses, and she knows so much about Tom's horses. I don't work for Dan. I don't work with Dan. I'm his sounding board, but I'm not in there as much of a hands-on part of it.
All right. So from what I understand, producer Brian's saying that maybe you really like a horse, or maybe you know something, because we like inside information, right? And so you're there, you're at the track, you're talking to the trainers, you're talking to the owners, the jockeys. You might have some insight. I'm hoping you're going to tell me that you love Cyberknife.
Okay, so here's what I was so close to this. So I'm going to talk about the dirt mile. And, when I do my handicapping, I use EquinEdge as my sort of check against myself. I do it by myself first, but then I always go on and I want to see what the program's going to tell me and what your numbers are going to tell me. And as I came away from the dirt mile, I was down to 2 horses. It was either going to be Cyberknife or Pipeline. And I was so excited when I logged on. I clicked, Keeneland race 5 Saturday. Top selection for EquinEdge was Cyberknife. The Scotty Longshot is Pipeline. So I was feeling really good. Like I really kind of got it between those 2 horses. So here's the thing about Cyberknife that I really like in this race. I think he's a horse that, as good as he's been, going the 1 1/8, trying to carry that speed at 1 1/4 miles, and I think those are races and those distances are all within his capabilities. I think when you get him to a mile, you can really send him and you can really use that speed because he can carry it and he can carry it like a sprinter to the mile distance. But what pushed me to Pipeline in the end as the top pick was they don't run the dirt mile at Keeneland very often. So they begin the race so far up the stretch. It's the shortest run into the turn of any race on Breeders' Cup weekend. And they finish at the first wire. So it's also the shortest stretch drive of any of the races. The juvenile races, the juvenile fillies, the juvenile will finish at that first wire, but they're going to start farther back because they're going a mile and a 16th. You have a longer run into the first turn.
Right.
So what pushed me to Pipeline was he's a horse that can be just as fast. He's a horse that's fresh. He's so fast, he pressured Jackie's Warrior in the forego. This is a fast horse. I don't worry about him at the distance. And he's drawn inside. He's drawn favorably. He's post 3 versus Cyberknife in post 9. If they were flip-flopped as far as post position goes, I would have ended up on Cyberknife. But that short run to the first turn was what really kind of pushed me in the direction of Pipeline. So he'll be my top pick there.
I'm actually really glad we talked about this because I was really on the fence on this horse, but I'm a little thrown off, and maybe you have some insight on this as to why Irad Ortiz got off to ride Laurel River.
I think Bob Baffert really likes Laurel River. I've watched him train myself at Santa Anita a few times. I think he's the buzz horse coming into this race this year. I've heard a lot of people talking about him.
Me too.
He's also very fast. But, you know, I look up those Thurgraph figures pretty often. He's not nearly as fast on Thurgraph as Jackie's Warrior or Pipeline. That doesn't mean he can't be. That doesn't mean he can't improve to that level. But so far, he's still several points away from those horses.
And no one would have even considered this horse before the Pat O'Brien. I mean, right. And I still don't think that race actually was very tough. And so I'm not sure this horse has the kind of class that Cyberknife has at all. Drawn better, a little bit faster, of course, and is kind of the now horse. But and not only that too, I don't understand why Baffert wouldn't use JJ Hernandez, because he uses JJ obviously a lot. He's riding him today, you know, on Saturday, I think. And why take JJ off?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to talk to the jocks agents to try and figure that one out. But I think if you look at Laurel River, he's pretty carefully managed. And Bob doesn't always do that. He's pretty quick to jump into graded stakes races with his horses because he has that kind of stock and that ability. I mean, this horse ran against non-winners of one competition a few times. Right. Ran him on 2 before jumping up to the Pat O'Brien. I don't think he's had him pegged as one of his better stakes horses for a while, but I think he's just really come to hand right now.
Well, it doesn't seem like Bob Baffert as well to give this horse a bit of a layoff here from August 27th. I mean, a little surprised by being off a few months.
Yeah, he's not, you know, he doesn't usually take his foot off the gas pedal at all. Whereas Steve Asmussen has brought all his horses into the Breeders' Cup fresh this year. That's not usually the case with Bob. But I do think that Bob has started to kind of watch the numbers a little bit, and you don't want a horse that's going to regress, that's going to bounce. Right. So realistically, where was he going to run Laurel River in the last couple of months anyways? He probably doesn't think he wants to go as far as the Goodwood distance. He had to fund it in there. If I'm not going to run there and I don't have any other one-turn races, what do you have left for this horse outside of putting him on a plane?
So I have to ask you about Gunite. Do you have any insight on Gunite? I don't know what to think about this horse at all.
I think he's a really good horse. I am surprised they didn't just put him away and wait until the Malibu, because I think he's a really good one-turn horse. And I think this, you know, on different racetracks, if we were on a one-turn configuration, this could be really his race. But coming back off the Perryville, he ran a career best. He's back in 14 days. This is not Steve Asmussen's MO. He's a fast horse, and I think he's probably so sharp that it was hard not to run him in the Breeders' Cup. But I don't think this was plan A for them at all. The Perryville was plan A. I think they were planning to wait with him, but he looks great in his work. I'll give him that much. His weight is good. His coat is good. He looks like he's in pretty good health. I'm not sure he can come back and do it again, though, in 2 weeks.
Been in the money in 11 of 12 tries, and we have questions. That's incredible. That just tells you how strong the field is, because this horse would normally be 3 to 5. You'd be surprised to know, if you don't already, that Tyler Gaffleone has never won a Breeders' Cup race in like 0 for 33 or something like that.
I was shocked to see that. I saw that earlier this week. I rate him as one of the better riders in the country, honestly. I'm really surprised. And I hope this is his year, because I think he's absolutely at that level and at that caliber.
He sure is. He's had a wonderful year. And then in this race, lastly, I wanted to ask you about the 7-horse Cody's Wish, because this horse seems to. The last race wasn't that bad, but this horse is a bit fractious, and still in the 4 ago, I mean, just romped in that race. And look at this horse's record. I mean, this horse has been in the money in 10 of 10 tries, earned $812,000. I mean, this is how strong this field is. That this horse is 6-1 on the EquinEdge morning line. What do you think of this one?
I was kind of surprised that he was the 5-2 morning line choice in the race. I mean, I know his record is really impressive. He's 6 for 10, but I also think he's a horse that Bill Mott has kind of carefully managed too.
Right.
The two things that I have against him are the fact that he hasn't won around 2 turns yet. And I think you can explain away those losses. One of the races he was coming off a layoff. Another race he had some trouble. So maybe, I don't know, stretching out from 6 furlongs to the mile and an eighth in his debut or in his second start was just too much for him. But he hasn't won around 2 turns. And that big kind of wide sweeping move hasn't really worked at Keeneland. And I don't think it's going to work to that short stretch.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. All right, before we let you go, any insights, anything? I mean, you're over there at Keeneland, you're talking to trainers, you're talking to owners. Is there any juice, anything you can give us?
I'm trying to think if there's anything I've heard that you haven't been able to see on paper. I like Kamari in the sprint. She's
Me
looked
too.
really good
Me
in
too.
the mornings. Gosh, who's training? Modern Games looks phenomenal. I think he's as tough as it gets in that race. And he's a horse that's really thrived on his racing. I think the post draw killed the Euro in the turf sprint. Highfield Princess being all the way outside, or the Platinum Queen. I keep
The
getting
Platinum Queen, the 12-horse. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think she can get it done from that outside post. I know he'll tell you. Domestic spending. Domestic spending off the year layoff would not surprise me at all.
Really?
I think he's one of the best turf horses Chad Brown has ever had. I don't like the post position, but the layoff doesn't worry me. I think he's that good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Domestic spending. Okay, you heard it here first. 14 post, off since August of last year, almost 15
The
months.
next class, he's got it. He can do it.
He does. No doubt about it. I mean, this is a Modern Games, though. Look at this 9-5, Christina, on the EquinEdge morning line. Is Modern Games this good?
Yeah, he is. I mean, his Woodbine Mile blew me away. And I would be concerned about a horse like him over a track like Keeneland if he hadn't been so successful, at least in crossing the wire first at Del Mar last year. That long stretch at Woodbine is so different from, I think it's 990 feet that we have on the turf stretch at Keeneland, but he's handy enough to do it. He's athletic enough to do it. And sometimes those 3-year-old colts, they'll take as much training and racing as you throw at them. And he's one of those. He's robust. He's so full of himself. And I think he's just kind of hungry for more and coming back over firmer ground than he's been over in a long time. I think he's going to run really well.
Oh, it would be fantastic to see that for sure. I'd love to see domestic spending win this race. That would be fantastic. Thank you so much for staying up and joining us. It's so good to chat with you. We haven't chatted in a long time, and I'll be back. My youngest Alexis is gonna have a baby in a couple of weeks, so I'm gonna be a grandfather. I'll be in California, and so maybe I'll come over and see you over at Santa Anita, hopefully.
Yeah, come visit. We'd love to see you guys.
All right, have fun out there. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Christina. Christina Blacker joining us here, wow, I mean, that was a big surprise. Great job, Brian, getting Christina in, and our next guest, is okay. Well, first of all, I talk about him all the time because I'm a big fan, and he's one of the more impressive young men you're ever going to meet in your life. That is for sure. He's definitely ensuring that the future of horse racing is going to be alive and well, and also one of the nicest young men ever. He first went to a racetrack when he was 10 years old with his father. I've seen his father and him together. They're together all the time. They share that love of horse racing. He's got a bachelor's degree in communication. He was a baseball player, left-handed pitcher. What else? I mean, it's ridiculous. He worked on the backside for John Sadler. He got his start as a race caller at 23 years old, folks. 23. He's only 30 years old. I guess my question to all of you, what have you done in your life? I mean, my God, Matt, how are you?
Howdy, good to see you, buddy. I am great. And you know what? The thing is, I got this beautiful In-N-Out vanilla milkshake that I've basically been chowing down on this thing, listening to Christina and you guys and Gino. And everybody. Nick Hines, how are you doing today?
Oh man, I couldn't be better. I got producer Brian, and he's helping and doing his thing, and it's just made the show so much better. And so we decided, now that we have Brian aboard, maybe we could do some of these Breeders' Cup shows. Man, it's way more work than I could have ever imagined before. I would just turn on the computer and start talking, and now all of a sudden we got these produced shows, and it's crazy, but it's really been neat to have the guests. And of course, we have a really amazing community here at EquinEdge. The chat room goes crazy. We've got some fanatical people, some damn good handicappers. We're very passionate about horse racing, and I think that's what EquinEdge is about. And you've seen on the Golden Hour shows, like all the booms and things like that. They go crazy, and genuinely, I'm always talking about what an amazing race caller you are. You're so polished. I meant to ask you too, because I'd never asked you this before, but how did you get your start as an actual race caller at such a young age?
So what happened was I was always sort of, it was in there that I wanted to do it. I remember when I was a little kid, I'd go to the races and ask my dad, how do they know the lengths? How does the race caller know the names and all those things? But I never really thought about doing it in the beginning. Then I did a talent show where I called a race, actually, in middle school, and I did halfway decent calling off the TV for the talent show. And eventually, when I got my job working in the press box after I worked for John Sadler, my uncle and aunt got me a pair of binoculars, and I started practicing in there, and the dream came alive, and I sort of fell in love with it, just the art form of calling a race, because it really is an art. And I just kept practicing, and I have the mentality of an athlete because I played baseball so long. Everything I do, I compare it to an athlete's perspective and state of mind. And I just practiced. And there were times where I didn't know if I would make it. I didn't know if I'd be good enough. I didn't know if I had the talent, but I said, I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to keep practicing, and I'm going to keep doing this until I get good at this, or as good as I can get. And, I got lucky.
Well, hard work makes perfect. And you deserve that. By the way, I was reading your bio, and it's like you're really getting into golf right now. I just want to give you one recommendation. Make sure you don't go play with Dave Weaver. If you do, you better get a lock for your bag, because you probably won't have any balls left in it. And then you better make sure you have a lot of money as well, because the cart girl seems to come around a lot more when it comes to Dave Weaver. So just be careful.
Does Dave hit the ball in the water a lot, or what?
Well, there's a tweet out there that I had sent out where Dave was hitting a pink ball, and he hits the ball, and the ball goes like this, and a car is coming the opposite way, and I'm like, I'm thinking this pink ball is gonna land in this car's windshield, and it did, and I'm like, how'd it go? And he comes back, and he's got like right in the camera, and he's like, it's in the street, and it's just like, that's Dave Weaver. I mean,
that's Dave.
Yeah, that's Dave, and looking forward to sharing more of those moments with Dave. So race calling first at Emerald Downs. You got your start there, which was amazing, and then you got the call that maybe the spot was open over at Golden Gate Fields. What did that feel like?
It felt really just a dream come true, because I wanted to call racing in California at some point. That was a goal of mine, to just be able to call one race in California at some point in my career. And I'd already worked at Golden Gate for a year as the paddock analyst, just handicapping and making picks on air, because I wanted to get some experience with that. Frank Miramati was actually moving on to the winter meet at Aqueduct. He got a gig over in New York, and he wanted to really seize the day and seize that moment. So the management had already gotten to know me, and they heard me call a few races. I went up and called a few, and I have to give a lot of thanks and to David Duggan, because our general manager, he was the one who really, he had faith in me, and he said, you're our guy. I think you're going to be great. I think you're a perfect person for the position. And there were people all over the world that applied for Golden Gate to call there. So it's an honor. I take it every day as a blessing, and I don't take it for granted. And I just feel really lucky and blessed to be able to do something I love, and to be able to be part of First Racing and First, the company. Obviously, we have a lot of resources, and we're very pro racing, and I've met a lot of great people along the way. I'm just very lucky.
So I want to talk to you about the racetrack up there. I'm a really big fan
Mhm.
of the synthetic track that Golden Gate Fields has. I talk about it all the time. I truly believe like you can't be like way back, but in a lot of tracks you can't be way back. But it plays really fair to either speed or
Yeah.
coming from behind. You don't see a lot of issues there as far as horses breaking down. Like it's a really wonderful track, isn't it?
It's a lovely track, and I know the trainers really like training over it. The riders must be happy at the very least. They don't get dirty if it
No.
rains. They don't get dirty if it's dry either. So it's like you said, a very safe track, extremely safe track, a very fair track. Trip is really important over the Tapeta surface, and I think riders as well. They learn to ride better and smarter races on the Tapeta because sometimes on dirt you can make an early move, get away with it. Here you really can't unless you're just on much the best horse. So I know it's good on horses' feet. And we have a lot of horses here that really take to it well and enjoy training over it. And I think it helps them from a longevity standpoint. And it's fun to call races because, as you said, they're very exciting. You don't see them all stretched out,
No.
especially competitive races. They're packing up. So I think it's fun to call races, but I think it makes me a better race caller to be able to call races like that too.
It was speaking of jockeys coming back dirty. Just watch Keeneland over the next couple of days on that dirt track
Yeah.
and see the horses and the jockeys when they come back. I mean, it's just insane. I mean, they are just muddied up, dirtied up. Like, I wonder sometimes horses coming from behind how they really do it because I mean they're taking a beating, and so and the same with the jockeys for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a bunch of desert just flying in your face as you're running. I mean,
It
and
really
that's
is.
the thing too. That's the thing too is this, it's interesting you mentioned that because, for example, some of our Golden Gate horses went to Del Mar this summer, and a few of them really didn't take to that track because of the kickback. And we saw a lot of Golden Gate horses climbing on that track.
Yeah.
So I think for one, it'll be interesting to see how the baby races on the dirt play out, the juvenile fillies and the juvenile, especially with these younger horses. I'm imagining with that kickback, it's only going to help speed horses and inexperienced horses that are, getting dirt in their face. I don't know if they're going to take to that. So that's a very good point, and we'll see how the track plays early on in the card because you would think any sort of hard kickback it's going to help horses that are a little more forwardly placed.
Well, and I think that's why a lot of people believe that you have to be forwardly placed in Keeneland, and I think that's part of the reason is that the kickback can be so brutal, and it also that
Mhm.
kickback can really hurt as well, hurt the
Yeah,
horse, and it kind of stuns them a little bit, especially when they're younger, and that's why I think you see a lot of the younger horses that are more tactical or front runners that do really well over there because the young ones aren't just used to that kickback. Um, who's a better handicapper in your family?
my dad.
Dad.
My dad. He's a good handicapper, and his specialty is turf racing.
Wow.
Um, there was a time where he was really slumping when Del Mar had the synthetic surface. So he did a project and he said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play turf racing. He went 8 for 9 in this experiment. So he said, why the heck would I stop? So every time he's handicapping, the first thing he does is look at how many turf races are on a card and he looks at the turf races and then goes from there. But I'm sure you've talked about it on here before. My dad's a really good handicapper, a really sharp handicapper, but he's also very smart as a bettor. He knows he just has that sense when to hang tight, don't play a race if he doesn't have confidence. He knows when he feels confident that he really has a strong opinion and he usually makes the right move. And he's very much win place, exacta, daily double, pick 3, occasionally a pick 4, but those are sort of his bets. And he's very smart. And I think when you talk about multi-race bets, something I need to work on, even on air, and my dad's very good at it, on the contrary, is ticket formulation. And he's just very smart. He's very smart. So not only is he a good handicapper, knowing how to read a form, knowing how to watch a replay, but he's very intelligent when it comes to the strategic part of betting.
And I would tell you, a lot of times I hear a lot of frustrated handicappers, and they're not taking seriously enough the betting side of it and putting your tickets
Right.
together. They need to handicapping. All of us are going to be hot one day, cold another day. It's so important to know how your ticket placement is, managing your money, your budget, all that kind of stuff is so important. And I just see a lot of handicappers just gravitate towards the handicapping side of it. And I think it's because it's more of an escape. Whereas they don't really have to think as much. But when you have to put tickets together and figure out your betting strategy and all this stuff, you have to really use your brain. And what's called, and it was one of the reasons why I created EquinEdge, actually, it's called cognitive load. When you're handicapping and you've all of a sudden been in 5 hours of handicapping, your brain is foggy. And by the time you get to the betting side of it and your strategy, you're shot. And
Right.
how many times have you seen where somebody handicapped a race and took an hour or two to handicap that race and literally 1 minute to make their bets, to figure out what their betting strategy is going to be? And the reason I bring it up is I really do hope that people really, in the industry, in the game, because I want to see, because when I was younger, I was a lunatic better. And I just want to see people have longevity. And I see, sometimes we'll see people unsubscribe with EquinEdge, and it's always, I have to take a break, and it just kills me to see that.
And it goes hand in hand, right? If you could be a really good handicapper, but if you're not good with ticket formulation, you can still lose.
Yeah.
On the same token, you could get lucky. You may not handicap a race 100%, but might decide to press an all button or spread, or know when to spread and when not to, know when to pass, know when to play. And that could be the difference between a losing day and a winning day. And that's what's interesting about me, is when I go on TV, I have to put my pick 5 bet in. I have to put my pick 4 bet in every day. But I'm somebody who is very patient when it comes to betting the races. If I don't feel strong about a sequence, I'm not going to play it. And that's something my dad taught me. It's just simple as that. And the people that win are the people that have that good sense of knowing when to push and play and when to hold back and say, okay, we're going to wait a little bit. And that will make or break your success as a player.
Absolutely. I'm glad we had that subject, actually. Okay, let's talk about the Breeders' Cup Turf. $4 million long games Breeders' Cup Turf. Nation's Pride really does look like the player. I've looked around at this up and down. I'm not sure this horse is going to get a really good trip. First of all, there is some slight speed in here, but I think Nation's Pride and Charles Appleby is just ridiculously what a high win percentage he hits at.
He is a terrific trainer. And the thing about him is, I compare these trainers to talent scouts, Scott, in other sports, like a baseball scout. They can watch an athlete. They can watch an athlete and they know exactly where they fit, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. And Charlie Appleby has just done a fantastic job of being able to analyze his players over in Europe and saying, this one fits for these Breeders' Cup races. So you have to just assume that these two horses you've got here for Charlie Appleby are well spotted and ready to run a good race. The morning line odds indicate it. The form indicates it. I originally thought this race totally went through the Euros, but I decided to go with an American horse, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I think Nation's Pride, he's facing older horses, but the way he's winning indicates that he's ready to step up in class. And I don't know what you feel, Scotty, but I don't think this is the strongest Breeders' Cup Turf rendition that we've seen over the years. So I don't think it's necessarily going to take a world beater. He could be a legit good grade 1 horse. There's no one in here that's an absolute standout. So I could see a horse like him as a 3-year-old beating older horses in here, knowing that he's just demolished his company as of late. I could see that.
Just tell me you don't think Channel Maker is going to win this race, right?
No. Although I love Maker as a horse. I think he is so cool, and he's just dancing all the dances.
He is.
I mean, you gotta love him. I mean, he's just.
I can't tell you how much money I've bet on this horse, and I've lost every single race because I don't know. There's something about this horse that just draws you in. You want to bet it, but it's just not been the biggest winner. But he's had a long career, this 8-year-old gelding. But and Bill Mott's done a wonderful job keeping up the races. I mean, he's only got 9 wins, 6 seconds, and 5 thirds, and almost $4 million earned. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. I mean, this horse is, and he's been like this for years. It's not like he's been like it for a year and that's it. And it's amazing. I'm always amazed when I see horses that are able to keep their form like that. it's so hard, no matter what level, for horses to keep good form. Whether I'm watching a horse for 12.5 that sort of climbs up to 12.5 claimers at Golden Gate, and after a while they start to drop again. And to see these top class horses just performing year after year, or any horse willing to keep form, is just pretty incredible, really. So I love the horse, and if he won, my heart would be very happy. But
Right.
we're playing with our brains as well here, handicapping wise, and it just doesn't look like he's quite fast enough.
No, and then, speaking of longevity and how often horses run here in the States, Matt, these horses don't run often. I mean, we're lucky if these horses run every 45 days, but in Europe, I mean, look at these horses. I mean, this is nothing. There's so many of these horses that are here on this Breeders' Cup weekend that were ran 2-3 weeks ago. Like they're 7-9, 8-6. Look at this, 9-17. Some of these top horses like this. I mean, look at Nation's Pride. July 9th, won this race, grade 1 over at Belmont, goes to Saratoga. I mean, and he's running in the States right now, which is incredible. But this Irish bred is just, it's insane how often they run these horses. What gives them this longevity? I mean, how are they able to do this where these horses here in North America can't do that?
Well, I think there are a few reasons for that. One of the reasons is a lot of these horses do run seasonally. I mean, you see comments here, break lines in the comments in the PPs. These horses take breaks every year. They get time. So I think the fact that they're running seasonally, even 6-7 months out of the year, it gives them that longevity. I think medication is a big part of it. They don't run on Lasix. I think that helps. I mean, I don't want to get too much into a Lasix debate, but horses certainly have shown to recover a little bit quicker when they're not running on Lasix after races.
Right.
I think it's the way they train. I think that they train not necessarily for time. Here, everything's about timing. You got the condition book, you got the timing of races, and every 4 weeks, like you said, every 5 weeks. Over in Europe, they train very much for stamina and sort of building that stamina up, especially off of breaks. Part of it as well is the way the races are run. We had a 2-mile race here, Scotty, a few years ago at Golden Gate, and the horses that came out of that race, apparently from what the trainers told me, were not tired at all. And the reason is because they basically galloped for the first 1.5 miles, 1.75 miles, and then sprinted home. And these horses are doing 2-mile gallops to prepare for that race as it is. So
Right.
a lot of these horses in Europe, they're not running full bore right away. They're taking their time and they're finishing. So I think there are a lot of factors like that. I wanted to mention Broome, because look at Broome. I mean, this horse ran second in the Breeders' Cup Turf last year.
Yep.
And 3 weeks later, he was in Japan. He flew all the way to Japan. And now he didn't run well, but we've seen Aiden O'Brien run horses that have run well on those turnarounds. And here in America, 3 weeks to wheel a horse back for a lot of high-quality horses, that's a very quick time just staying in one spot, never mind you traveling the world.
Well, and speaking of that, when you look at Broome, and I was just about to bring Broome up, it's the EquinEdge second pick. But last year, at least when it came here and it got second place at 9-1 in this race, it had good form. The form is not so good on him right now. What do you make of it? I don't know what to think, because he's 7-1 on the EquinEdge morning line. He's EquinEdge's second pick. And I don't know. What do you make? Irad Ortiz is aboard. What do you make of this horse?
See, I X'd him out pretty early in the process. I bet against this horse, feeling, you know what? He freaked last year in the Breeders' Cup Turf. He picked a great day to run the best race he's ever run. And ever since then, he hasn't really gotten back to that form. He ran a pretty good race at Ascot in June, but his last few races aren't really cutting it. I mean, he was 86-1 in the Arc. Now, this is an easier spot than the Arc de Triomphe. But I will say this, Scotty, I think this horse likes firm ground. It looks like he's a lot better on firm ground than he is soft ground, even though he did win a Group 1 over soft ground last year in July of 2021. But recently, he's been better on firm ground. So that's one thing that I think he has going for him, is I think he likes the firm going. But I just don't know if he can duplicate that last race last year, because it doesn't look like he has before since then.
You know, what's crazy though is I can tell you this, that when we look at stuff, we look at it from a point of view from a human. And so this is the type of horse I would throw out all day, every single day. But I get my butt beat by the system constantly because there's something about these algorithms. And this is where horse racing is going, where it's able to look at these statistics where we don't process these statistics the same way an algorithm would. And it sees stuff that maybe we don't see. Maybe it's seeing that this horse likes firmer ground. Maybe it's seeing this horse ran good here. And that's why it's making it the EquinEdge second pick. I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm going to do either way, but it is interesting. I'm not sure I would throw this horse out completely.
And if he ran well, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, he's going to be coming from off the pace in a race that for a mile and a half's got a little bit of pace to run into. But we'll have to check the weather as well, and we'll see. I mean, I don't think it's supposed to rain, and if it does, not that hard. So we'll have to see how the ground is. But he's on the right footing, firm turf. The question is he going to show up with his C race, which he's shown the last couple races, or is he going to come with that race we saw last year? By the way, Yabir, who beat him last year, there are no horses like Yabir in this race. Those two Charlie Appleby horses in this race this year aren't at that level. So if Broom runs back to that race, he could win. Absolutely. But I'm gonna play against him.
Well, you're gonna take Warlike Goddess, aren't you, the mare?
I am. And at first, what's interesting is I looked at her for a long time and I was really thinking, this is an awfully tough task. But the more I looked at this field, like I said, it's not the strongest division for this type of race. I thought the way she won last time out was very workmanlike. I think the two times that she lost this year, the one time she lost this year, she was very unlucky to do so. I think she was clearly the best horse. And to put it nicely, just from a tactics perspective, I'm not going to point any fingers, but I think tactically what happened out on the track, they were being a little bit too passive, and I think it cost them the race. She likes Keeneland. Her speed figures are good. She should get a good trip stalking the pace. And I'm a big believer that, whether you're a colt, gelding, filly, or mare, if you're good enough, you're good enough. And against this field, she's a win machine. And I think she can be right there if she runs her very, very best. Joelle's going to have to work out a good trip from the inside. It's a big field, but she's very tactical. And I'm going to go with Warlike Goddess in this race. I look at a horse like Rebel Romance, for example, and I say to myself, yes, he's won a couple of Group 1s. Both of those were in Germany, and no disrespect to German racing, but it's not quite at the level that Great Britain and Irish racing are. So I think a lot of people are going to look at this Charlie Appleby horse who's won a couple of Group 1s. They're going to see that, and they're going to go, boom, that's your horse. Not necessarily. He was all out to win those races, and this is a tougher field, I think. So, I think a lot of people are going to maybe overbet Rebel's Romance here, and that's why a horse like Warlike Goddess you might get 4-1, 9-2 on her. You might get that morning line.
What about Mishriff? I mean, this horse has earned, I think, almost as much as any horse ever, $15.8 million, but doesn't seem to be getting much fanfare.
The problem with him is his form. I mean, he's just come back this year, and it doesn't look like he's quite the same horse as he was last year. So that's really the concern for me. He's adding blinkers. I actually see the blinkers on move as a negative sign, Scotty. I just wonder, you've got a horse here. I mean, look what he did. He won in Dubai Group 1s last year. I mean, he was fantastic. He won the Saudi Cup last year. You've got this really classy horse, and all of a sudden they're putting blinkers on him just out of the blue. I mean, I think that's sort of a negative. I see that as they're trying to wake him up here. They're trying to sort of make a last-ditch dive to try to get this horse to improve a little bit. The post isn't great. And like I said, I think he was a better horse in 2021. So he's a horse I'm playing against as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually I'm going to play against that horse. Initially, I looked at him like, oh, man, this horse looks really good. But the more I look at this and we talk, I'm like, no, I think I'm going to pass on this horse. The form just is not very good. It doesn't look like Frankie Dettori, one of the top jockeys in all the world, is getting really many great mounts. I know he's going to stay here and try to run because he wants to get hopefully a 3-year-old for the Kentucky Derby. But I was a little bit surprised to see that he wasn't really on more contenders.
Yeah, and you know how that goes with riders. I mean, no matter what level you're at, you go through peaks and valleys. I mean, some riders, they're They're not getting the quality of horses. They're not getting the right types of horses for whatever reason. I mean, Mike Smith, he only has 2 Breeders' Cup mounts, which is not often for him that he has that little amount of business on a Breeders' Cup day. And these are the types of days he's riding for. And it's no disrespect to Mike Smith, of course, but it just goes to show, I mean, peaks and valleys here. And I think that with him, he's trying to come here to find a good dirt horse to win the Derby with. I think you're going to see him on some Bob Baffert horses in California. That'd be my guess. But I'll say this about Frankie. He's riding like he's in his 20s still. I mean, he's a fantastic rider. He's an unbelievable rider. He
sure is. All right, Matt. Well, thank you so much for your time and your insight on these races. We actually we really needed some help in this race. I think you took us off of Misshriffs, and I think you're spot on with that. Warlike Goddess, I think we're realizing that this one is probably a big player in here. This mare, Nation's Pride's the horse to beat for sure, and maybe Broom. The more we talk about Broom, I think I'm getting a little bit more confirmation in my mind that, you know, maybe I might not see it, but it doesn't mean it's not there. And, you know, it's the system is showing 7-4 here. And then I was really blown away by Masterpiece. This horse is the EquinEdge long shot, and you might get a price there. So maybe if you're playing in some exotics, or tell your dad, maybe just throw in Masterpiece, maybe in the 3rd or 4th spots, depending on which vertical you play.
He's my long shot, Scotty. I like him as well. My friend actually works for the Michael McCarthy barn, and he told me the horse is doing great. And the one thing I really like about this horse is he ran so well when he was fresh, coming off a 2.5-month break. And I love what Michael's doing here. Michael McCarthy, he's freshening this horse up. I think he's really going to have a nice kick, because I think he sort of lost that kick last time out when he wheeled back in a month. So he's back to being fresh. And just a shout out to my buddy Danny. He's watching this. He says he likes Nation's Pride and Misshriff. Those are his 2 horses. So
he likes Misshriff.
He likes Misshriff. So he's going to go against what we feel. But Masterpiece, if it's an EquinEdge long shot, if he's an EquinEdge long shot, I'm going to have to use him, Scotty. I like him as well on paper. Yeah. Yeah,
believe me, I can tell you that you don't even want to know how much I've lost in the last couple of years leaving out the EquinEdge long shot. I'm just an absolute moron. But Matt, listen, I'm doing the golden hour on Sunday, so I'll be seeing you on Sunday and rooting you on.
And thank you to everybody who's tuning in and for your support, Scotty. I really appreciate that. Golden Gate Fields appreciates it, and I appreciate everybody's very nice comments. I read some of them on the side here. So it's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to give you guys more shout outs, and thanks for
we love it, Matt. Believe me, everybody goes crazy in the chat room every time you do it. Thank you so much, Matt. We'll talk to you soon.
You'll be getting more, Scotty. Sounds good, buddy.
Okay, my man. All right. Tell your dad hello.
Right. Take care. I will. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We'll see you later. Matt Dinerman, everybody, track announcer from Golden Gate Fields, and just 30 years old, folks. Literally 30 years old. Think about that for a second. Just unbelievably polished and such a good guy. Our next guest, one of my very good friends, one of my favorite people, craziest person I know, sports bettor extraordinaire. Never met a sports book that he's never been to. That's for sure. I just want to start off with just saying, can we get Sophie cinched? That's the first thing I want. I could care less about your opinion.
She's asleep already, Scotty. It's 7:00.
Damn it! Come on,
no, she's not asleep, and she probably would give you a cinch, but
she probably would pick a cinch over what you and I would pick any day.
She doesn't want to lose her winning streak going back 2 years ago. By the way, what's up, fool?
Everything's good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I looked at one race for you, so don't ask me. By the way, do you think I have a vanilla shake?
What are you drinking?
It's not a vanilla shake from In-N-Out.
Well, no, that's for sure. Do you think I have a glass of water? I drunk too.
Where do you think I bought it?
I don't know. The nearest liquor store, I'm sure. I don't know.
Vegas, like a little gift shop in Vegas.
Oh, yeah, that looks familiar. Oh, you're talking
there's
about
a drunk one and a drunk two. So we got two. Netley's one and I'm two. So we walk around the strip with our cups. But a little bourbon. You know, this is like Christmas Eve, right? The night before the Breeders' Cup. So I looked at one race for you, specifically the Classic. I think, did you say that best for the last?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. No, for sure. But by the way, before we get into the handicapping, I do have a couple of questions for you, okay? So I'm not done with you just yet. But one, have you qualified for the NHC yet?
Nope.
I haven't really tried that much, but I'm getting a little antsy now.
So what I typically do is try to qualify on site, Los Al, Santa Anita, and a lot of those I've just kind of been out of town, some untimely trips, and the ones that I were there, I didn't do very well. I'm terrible online in those $2 and win in place. I'd rather play the live bankroll, just like you. But yeah. I think that the opportunity that you and I will both have, because we're going to be there regardless, both working, you for EquinEdge and me for FanDuel TV, is that there's that Thursday, first chance, last chance. Yeah. They usually give away about 20, 25 seats, somewhere between 18 and 25. So we could both get in that final opportunity from the ballroom if we don't get in before then. But we are kind of running out of time. It's November already.
I know. And I don't know that a lot of people know this, but in 2019, you won the consolation tournament at NHC. I mean, I don't think people realize, because you're just a fun, go-lucky guy, and you're just fun to be around. I mean, everyone wants your time, wants to be around you, but you're a damn good handicapper.
3 years ago I picked enough winners to win $10,000 and beat 618 other players, I think. But that was a fun one. So just to let people know, the top 10% of the NAC make the final day, and then the top 10 players make the final table. But the other 90% go into what's the consolation tournament, but they're still playing for 10 grand. So, and then it pays down all the way to I think 25 spots or something where you can win $1,000 or more. So
honestly,
cool.
It's ridiculous that it's only $10,000. I mean, you beat a
so
ton
hard
of
to win, right?
Yeah,
I know.
I mean, the consolation, they should put more money into that. I mean, it's really incredible what you did. I was thinking the other day, I was thinking about you, and I'm like, I miss the days that we'd go to the poker room and Hawaiian Gardens or wherever, and then we'd get on the table together, and we'd be like, okay, let's see who can last on the table the longest. Who did better, you or me, most of the time?
You did well. I remember one time you had a really crazy hand. I think you even might have videotaped it.
No, you were videotaping, weren't you?
You had but you had a 4 of a kind. I think you had pocket 4s, and the guy had pocket 3s or something, and it flopped 3-3-4. He flopped 4 of a kind, and you caught the other 4 on the river or something. The guy just couldn't freaking believe it. I don't think there was even bad beat jackpots at that point. So the guy just got totally screwed. But
no, there wasn't. Yeah. And he was pissed. He was so pissed.
I know. You're already eligible for the seniors WSOP bracelet. 2 more years. 2 more years. You have to be 50. I'm 48. 2 more years, we should just team up and go out there and try to win a bracelet in the seniors. But I know you've actually paid the main event before, something I've never done. But that would be the ultimate, poker jonesing, to just get in for 10 grand buy-in and playing against Ivy and Helmuth and Negranu, if you get fortunate enough to be at one of their tables.
Well, listen, I was at a table next to Helmuth.
You were?
Yeah, and Daniel
I don't think you told me that.
Yeah, no, Daniel Granu comes walking in, and he's recording everything. He's full of personality. And I remember it was sick. I was in I want to say, honestly, I was in 100
doing
places,
really well. Yeah, out of 7,000
so
people or something. Yeah.
Yeah. But here's what happened. So I was in the second to last position on a hand. I had pocket kings, and I went all in. Okay. And that was going to put me really, really high. This was the second day. And this is my first the first tournament, World Series of Poker. And the person in the last position, the tightest player on the table, calls me.
You're thinking he's folding no matter what, unless he has aces.
Right. I'm thinking there's no shot. Well, you knew what he had.
That's brutal.
Pocket aces, kicked my ass. I was done. That was my tournament experience, 2 days. So it didn't feel too good, but it's a wonderful experience if you can do it. It's pretty intense. You relax a little bit, but you realize that, man, there is some damn good players.
And it's long, right? It's just it's marathon sessions.
Oh, it's like a marathon. You got to be ready for it. Maybe get up, stand up, walk a little bit, hydrate, a lot of water. I mean, a lot of these poker players are in damn good shape because they know this, because they know they're like athletes, because if they don't stay in good shape, you very rarely see somebody really out of shape, or even older for that matter, win those win those tournaments because
a lot of young guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of young guys. I mean, and they're good. And they're sharp too. But all right, let's get to the handicapping. I'm going to throw this out there now. You probably heard, but I mean, I don't even think it's possible. I really want to talk to you more about who's going to be second, because I just have that much respect for Flightline. I think Flightline, personally, for me, is the best horse I've ever seen.
Yeah, and you're not the only one that said that. There are plenty of people that say that, and there are plenty of people that say you're full of shit. This horse has raced 5 times. Great horses raced 30, 40 times. Man of War, Secretariat. How can you say that after racing only 5 times? Because he wins by 20 lengths and 18 lengths and 16 lengths and 13 lengths and 12 lengths. So, and I never got a chance to see some of these horses because I'm, 48, and Secretariat was pretty much, I think I was 1 year old or not even born yet. So the races from the 70s, I don't really remember. Ferdinand, Alashiba, Sunday Silence, Easy Goer, 80s and 90s Cigar. He's better than those horses, but I'm not going to say he's the best horse I've ever seen. And as a matter of fact, I don't like betting 2 to 5 shots anyways. So I am respecting him to win by 10, but just the way that this race is going to unfold. And let's look at that. Let's look at the pace, because there are only 2 horses that want the lead. Life is Good's never been anything but first. Flightline has been second early before, but I don't think it was really by design. He got left in the race at Belmont, rushed up, it still won by 10 in New York. And, I don't think they can really get him to go slower than 45 if they tried, right? So I think there's going to be obviously plenty of pace on here. But looking at the pace, it's 91 for Life is Good, 89 for Flightline, and then a lot of slow horses. But Taiba is a 70 and should be sitting a perfect trip with Mike Smith. So I'm gonna bet the 1, just because the odds are going to be probably somewhere in the 6-7 to 1 range.
Yeah,
I think your EquinEdge morning line is on drugs, having Life is Good at 7 to 5. That might be a little bit of probably not an algorithm error, but just because the horse is so good and so fast and wins, I think the system figures he's going to get bet, but there's no chance he's 7 to 5.
So look, okay. First of all, look at the GSR, Dave, on Life is Good. Like, this horse does not want 10 furlongs.
No, and you don't even need the GSR to know that. If you watch his races, as soon as he hits top of the lane, he's all out. Now he's fighting. He's a game horse, but he's being asked where Flightline's just not going to be a nudge. And a huge GSR for Flightline at a 94. But yeah, I'm throwing Life is Good out. I think the GSR is a good indicator that he's going to stop at this mile and a quarter distance. Now, the equalizer could be Keeneland. If there's a horse that really doesn't want to go that far and a track that can get that horse home, it's probably Keeneland, when sometimes it can get a little bit speed bias. But I'm with you. He's a toss to me. And I think Taiba has to be in the number. And I think the crazy long shot, when you look at the SOR, the horse with the best SOR is Happy Saver. And he's going to be like 30 to 1.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, first of all,
anybody plot along for third.
No, he could. You're right. I'm actually glad you told me that, because Happy Saver could get third for sure. There's no question about it. I'm a huge fan of Epicenter. I think Epicenter's.
Are you? I don't know what to do with him, because, I mean, of the 3-year-olds, he had a really long campaign, right? He danced every dance. I think Taiba is the fresher horse, that of the 3-year-olds, kind of the up and comer. I think Taiba is the one that to me is kind of peaking, where Epicenter, to me, he's probably already ran his best race, but he's a good horse.
No, Dave, I disagree. This horse has only had 7 races this year and has been off since August 27th. I mean, ran huge, won easily in the Travers. I mean, this is a really nice horse. The distance is great. This horse is going to finish. First of all, what's the over/under with Irad Ortiz wins and over the weekend, and what's the over/under with Rosario? Because I can tell you this, I will give bets out. Irad's going to win, 5 or 6, and then Rosario's going to probably win, 3 or 4. It's going to be those 2, and then everyone's going to have like 1 win. Maybe somebody gets 2 wins. I think, You always see Jose Ortiz get 1 or 2 wins, but for sure, Rosario, Irad, Ortiz, I think you should include them. I'm not somebody that plays jockeys per se. I really am not. But I do think you just need to look at those guys, because in the Breeders' Cup, it's the best jockeys that get the best mounts, because people don't want to screw around. They want the top. They want the top jockeys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some comments right now in the chat. Has nothing to do with what you just said, but there's some pretty cool people in this chat room right now.
Amazing. Yeah.
Even though that one of them said the 2 most boring type of stories are fishing stories and poker stories, but we had to get a little bit of poker talk in the beginning. We won't talk fishing, that's for sure.
There's one of the top handicappers in the country right there. It's our friend Tim Yoler.
Tim! Wow, Zachy.
Yeah, Tim's there.
Hong Kong, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Like, let's just keep it real. Who's better, him or Christie? I mean, he taught Christie.
What do you mean? It's not even close. What do you mean?
It's not close, right? I mean,
it's not even close.
It's ridiculous. Both of their resumes are ridiculous, but I mean, Christie has to be, for me, probably the top female handicapper. I really believe that. Like,
she wins everything.
She wins everything. Like, and you know what she'll do? She'll be like, "Good luck in the tournament." I'm like, "Thanks, Christy." And literally, I'm like, then I go over and I see, and she's got her full bankroll without one play for like the first 7 races, and all of a sudden, right? Who does that?
Then she hits the last race, and then
she hits the last race, last
78
races.
to first. I know.
It's so crazy. Yeah,
Tim's out after 3 races. Yeah, I know.
So let me tell you, really, like, I feel like I see this race. I don't know who's going to be third. I will say that. But Life is Good's going to have the lead. Could Flightline go with Life is Good? 150%, I believe that. Does Flightline need to? No. So why would you do that? So let Life is Good. You got, in my opinion, one of the best jockeys in the world in Flavian Pratt. Let's Life is Good go. And I'm going to take you back on a story. So I was at Del Mar when I was doing the interfeed there, the simulcast feed. And when I was there, I really was watching Flavian Pratt, and he looks at his competition. He looks at the horse. He looks at the jockey. I noticed that with him, and he did this numerous times. And you'll see how he looks. He knows that guy is so good. He knows who his competition is. He really does.
Now, is this in the paddock, like he's staring them down and intimidating?
Yes, staring them down.
Or is this during the race, like he's like, okay, he's here, the horse to beat's over here? Are you saying he like is trying to like get in their head before the race even starts?
No, I don't think he's doing that. But I think that he's looking at the horse, maybe the flesh. I don't know. But I noticed that he would only stare at the contenders when he would only stare at the contenders. I watched that, and he's such a smart jockey. He holds all the cards here, meaning Life is Good is fast. He's just as fast, but doesn't have to go to the lead. And Life is Good is going to stop. And so he just sits back maybe 2 lengths behind Life is Good. Life is Good stops. He passes, wins the race by 10, 15 lengths. And which horse comes up for second? I think it's Epicenter. And then you can
pick it's Taiba. I mean, I would think Taiba can catch Flightline at the right price. But I would say Taiba for me is the ice cold partner to Flightline, and for you, it's Epicenter.
Hey, Tim's not happy you were saying that Christie's a better handicapper than him.
Well, then he needs to do something about it. It's called winning.
He needs to do something about it. You know, it's really neat. You and I go way back. I mean, Vegas, it's just a lot of great memories. I remember the first time I was on TVG. Do you remember TVG2? And you're in there and you're on first, and then you're like, I was supposed to go on like probably an hour beforehand. You kept saying, okay, we're going to go to commercial break, and then you're going to come in. I'm going to introduce you. And I'm like, just go one more. Just go one more.
It was crazy. It was like teaching Sophie how to ride her bike. And like, Sophie, you got to take off the training wheels. I can hold on to your seat the whole time, but you're never going to learn that way. I have to let you go. And if you fall down, you fall down. And you didn't want to fall down. You didn't want to even be in a spot to be able to fall down. But you got through your first couple of shows, and same with me. When you go out there, it's not easy, but with repetition, and this from doing this show now, now it's fun.
Now it's fun.
It's not fun when you're nervous and you're being really timid about everything. But once you start to be yourself, then it comes through.
Tell the folks about the story when you were when somebody didn't show up. Remember? Tell the first time you actually got on air. It's a wonderful story. I think people would be really interested in hearing it.
It was Gary Mandela. So he was part of a show. So we had Trackside Live, which was kind of the big show with Todd and Ken and Matt. And then we had a show called Trackside Light, which was more fun, later in the evening. Claudia Simon, Gary, I think Todd might have been part of that too. And it's just more fun. But that's kind of how Gary originally got involved. Richard Mandela's son, a great horseman, a great trainer. But he also was in television too, HRTV and TVG, both, within 20, 25 years ago. And he was supposed to be on at night. And he was with Priscilla Hojawala, who really was fantastic on television, but not a horse racing, handicapper, not really that knowledgeable about, trainers, stats, pace and whatnot. So he called in sick, like late. Like he got sick and he couldn't come in, and she would have had to be on by herself, and that just wasn't going to happen, So they're like looking, oh my God, somebody's got to go out there, and I'm literally like the only one still hanging around in the newsroom, just doing my notes and doing my work for the next day. I was behind the scenes, and like, Weaver, you got to go out there and help her, and just go out there and talk. And I'm like, what do I do? I don't want to do that, and I think I borrowed a suit from somebody or went in the wardrobe and found some suit that didn't fit. And I just went out there and I don't think I was very good. Like you could literally see the Adam's apple when I'm swallowing, just dry throat, nervous. And I got through it, but it wasn't something that I thought, oh, I nailed it. They're calling me tomorrow and I'm going to be on, but it was good. I mean, you got to be in the right spot at the right time. And that's kind of what gave me my first chance. Then 3 or 4 months later, somebody's sick. I kind of became the fill-in guy. And then eventually when we started Los Al, the quarters, we would go off the air at 9 and stop in the third race at Los Al, and that would be it. And then we eventually got ADW Wagering in California. Los Al was kind of one of our big partners at that time. We extended the hours. We went longer, and we kind of added a new show. And I knew quarter horse racing anyway. So it was a perfect fit for me to kind of get that extra opportunity at night. And then I was there for 15 years every night probably, and now I kind of graduated from that nighttime slot, and I'm doing a little bit more mainstream Triple Crown stuff, Santa Anita, a little bit of travel, and then of course I got the football show now too, More Ways to Win. So that's pulling me away from some of the horse racing stuff, but it's been a good run.
When I think about the top host and top analyst, so, broadcasting duo, honestly, straight up, no bullshit, it's you and Les. I just
legendary team for a long time. It's just kind of a fixture for people after work, late at night, put you to bed. You might watch us until Eastern time, midnight, even West Coast time, 8:30, 9:30. And it's just something that people could rely on. If you like Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, it's always going to be on at night. For horse racing people, it was me and Les, and it was just kind of you knew that you were going to hear our voices every single night. Unfortunately, Les got sick a few years ago, and he's hanging in there. He's still with us, but he's battling. But I don't think we'll ever see him on TV again, unfortunately. But for the time that he and I were on, there was nothing like it, and it was so many people really appreciated that learning, because it's quarter horse racing. Not a lot of people even really knew what that was, but obviously through him teaching about how to handicap and treble and adjusted clockings and whatnot, people I think became a little bit more passionate about that nighttime slot.
Yeah. What blew me away? I remember the first time I was on the quarters, it was you and then Les on the left side, and I was in the middle. I'm like this, you guys, it looked like this, right? Because I was up here. And I remember looking over at Les's PPs.
Oh, 18 different colors, 17 different scribbles, and it's everything's shorthand. If you saw it, you wouldn't be able to read what it was. And he's like, boom, lost 3/4 of a length. It really was cool to see just a printout of his page. Yeah.
I would like. I literally would just want to put that on auction. I don't know if he has any of those, but it's no joke. Like
I bet
people
he
with
does.
no way. Like it literally had. I want to say 12 different highlights of different colors, and then marks, and then notes on each race. It was crazy. I
know.
I mean, I worried for him all the time. I would like because he worked out, but he would sit for hours upon hours. And the thing is God bless his heart. The reason I love Les is because the work that man put in to give people winners, and he's loved because people knew that he put that work in to be able to, like, he didn't just throw picks out there. I mean, he was working his ass off to be able to give people picks. And I really respected Les for that.
Yeah. And he would, 10, 12, 14 hours. And he was old school too. Like he didn't really adjust with the technology. So when you could go to tvg.com and watch a replay, he's putting, VCR tapes in his recorder and pushing rewind. And like, that's just what he, pen and paper, like he just did it the way that he knew how to do it. And, even in the days of all this great technology, he would just keep going with the way that, made him great at it. But yeah, he was old school.
So are you going to play in the BCBC?
I'm not. Actually, TVG or FanDuel TV employees aren't eligible to be in the BCBC. I think that changed last year when TVG became a platform to be able to play.
Right. You had to play the tournaments on.
Maybe only ExpressBet hosted it, or you had to play online. But with TVG, so it says like TVG, Breeders' Cup, Tote, and all these companies, employees ineligible. So I could win a seat and transfer it or sell it. I actually tried to get in and I didn't, but I wouldn't have been able to play anyhow. So that's unfortunate because it's a fantastic I mean, there's nothing like starting with $7,500 and knowing that if it's your couple of days where you just get things right, you could be $500,000 richer. It's pretty
$500,000
it's
richer.
pretty cool.
Easy.
But I know a lot of people that are in. So are you playing?
I am.
You are okay.
I'm playing.
I'm rooting for some people. I'll look for you on the top of the leaderboard. You always start good, and then I'm like, where'd Scotty go? Oh fuck, he went to 0. What happened? Oh, I don't know. I just decided to bet it all on somebody. Like Scotty, when you get to second or third, relax.
Well, no.
Pace yourself.
No, I've gotten better at that. Like I've got more patient. I'm aggressive, no doubt. But
you can cuss on YouTube, right? I'm just checking. I thought it's okay, right?
Well,
you can cuss on YouTube, right?
Oh yeah, you're good. So when I won the Pegasus here a little bit over a year ago, I was in the lead only by about $5,000, and I had a wall of people chasing me, and you know how tough that was to not play. In fact, I was in first and third.
I know you had 2 entries. Race. I know you did well in that one. I'm talking more recently. I've seen you start with 3,000, get up to like 9. Like, oh, you could just coast home, and then like for whatever reason you try to get to like 30. When I don't know.
This has been an off year for me for tournaments. I've not played in a lot of them, to be fair, but I've had a rougher time. I really have been really focused on changing a few things on my handicapping, so to take a step backwards to move forward. And I think it affected me a little bit. And so I'm trying to dial it in right now. And I think I am. You got to get on a roll, and you have to stick with your convictions. But I do think that I'm figuring things out. I really do love these cards. Like, good. I wouldn't be surprised if I did well in the BCBC starting tomorrow.
I think that's a big part of it is going in confident to anything, kind of getting in your getting in your happy place, whatever it is. If it's listening to certain music that gets you in your zone or blocking things out. Are you playing from home?
I'm gonna play from home. I'm just gonna play from home and take it easy and watch the coverage. Are you gonna be watching from home, or are you working tomorrow?
I'm gonna be at Santa Anita for like the first half of the card there, which will kind of intertwine with the end of the Breeders' Cup. And then Saturday on the second half of Santa Anita, which most likely will probably be after the Classic, I'm guessing, or maybe right around when that's going. So I won't be a part much of the Saturday Breeders' Cup races, but tomorrow I'll probably be talking. I mean, but we have so many people doing that already at Keeneland, but they'll need to rely on us a little bit too at Santa Anita. So I'll probably be more involved tomorrow.
No, I mean, right now the FanDuel crew is like really, really talented.
There's a lot of them out there. Yeah.
So good. Yeah, so good. Do you have a best bet in these 2 days of races here in the Breeders' Cup that you like?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, without being a part of that show and not being at Keeneland and not having to be entrenched in all of it, I haven't, and not being in the BCBC, I haven't really looked at it as much as I would have in prior years as far as like both cards. I knew we were going to talk about the Classic, and that's the race that I definitely put the most time in, but there's really not a race that I've looked at extensively that I could say I love anybody.
So lastly, I was watching you and Caleb the other day, and you guys started talking about EquinEdge, which was, made me really proud, and it's really neat. And especially when, how I kept coming up to you and I was coming to Caleb and I was like, wait till you see what I'm building. Wait till you see what I'm building. And you know how I get, and rolling your eyes, but now, and I see, and I think that you see the value, and we have a long way to go, mind you. And that's from my perspective. I mean, but it's coming. But I think that from a perspective of a broadcaster and an analyst, I think EquinEdge is so very important because sometimes you get races thrown on you real quickly. I mean, you can't handicap 40 races. You know what I mean? Like, so I think,
way.
How is EquinEdge helping you or change the way you approach doing your job, for that matter?
Well, a lot of times I give credit, and I say, okay, here's the pace, here's the GSR. But there are other times that I'll just take for granted, like that there's the EE morning line, and a horse is 13-1, and the EquinEdge morning line has it at 4-1, and it's just easy for me to say, this horse shouldn't be 13-1, and sometimes I'll even say, I thought this horse would be 6-1, when really it's EquinEdge thought this horse would be 6-1, but I use that morning line a lot to find value and to pretty much find bad morning lines and call my shots 2 hours before and say, look, here's a horse at 12-1 in the morning line that he's no way he's going to be more than 3-1, and he goes off at 8-5 or something as the favorite, and I would never know that without EquinEdge. I would never in a million years be able to predict that horse was going to be that shorter price without that algorithm jumping out at me and saying, like, this is the bad morning line, this is the bad morning line, and being able to call it out and look smart at the end of the day because it's there and because that information is available to all of us. So it's something I use every single race. And like you said, we're doing 11 races an hour sometimes, and maybe you look a lot at Santa Anita and maybe you look a lot at Aqueduct, but all of a sudden it's like 2 minutes at Thistledown, and Ken's like, well, who you like? Normally I'd be like, I'm not looking at Thistledown, and I could literally go click, 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 click. Oh, well, the 7's the horse to bet in this race, and find 5 really easy reasons to tell him that without even picking up a form. So it's, I will give you as many shout outs as I can to keep you alive, because you're keeping me alive.
Well, and there's a lot more coming. Believe me, the team is growing right now, and from all ends. But we have a lot more programmers, and they're starting to. Part of these programmers is you have to teach them horse racing, and that and then they have to learn your programming. So it's been a lot of work. This year has been a year of taking a step backwards to move forward. Before I let you go, I did want to ask you, our newest algorithm is the pace number. And I mean this sincerely, not trying to be biased, but is this the sickest pace number you've ever seen in your life?
It's helpful when you can realize that speed horses are winning. So I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago at Churchill, there was a long shot, or not a long shot, but a horse that didn't look that great. It was like 7-1 that went to the lead and won by like 12 lengths. And it was race 1. I'm like, well, speed's good today. So I played a late pick 4. All I did was just use like the 3 fastest horses in every race. Or there was one where it's a total pace standout, and I singled. It wasn't even a very expensive ticket, and it paid like $600, but it was all because of the pace and identifying that it's a speed favoring track. So you do have to still be a little bit smart as to when to use it and when to know that the top pace number is going to be really good. But yeah, but just looking on paper, how are you going to be able to know these are the fastest horses without the number? Without the number.
And do yourself a favor, go back and look at some of the past races over the last week and just look at like the top 3 or top 4 EquinEdge morning lines, the favorites, and you'll find the winner in probably about 70-80% of the races.
And you know what I like about it too is that it does any track, like literally like weird tracks that I've probably never bet before. But there was one, and I like the quarters numbers. To me, are awesome. The quarters numbers are as good as thoroughbred numbers. But there was a race, I was just messing around. There was a race at like Fair Meadows, Tulsa or something, quarter horse race, and there was a EquinEdge morning line 5-2, and the horse was 50-1. It didn't win, but you know, I bet $10. Like, I don't care that the horse didn't win. Just to have those opportunities where on the small track, the small pools where you can get these huge overlays,
right?
That's pretty cool to just have that information at our fingertips. So yeah. I would just encourage people, maybe every once in a while, just look at some track that you've never looked at before, and maybe you can, you know, pick up on something that you never would have.
Do you use the ticket generator?
I do. Honestly, it's not something that I've made a ton of money with when I create a ticket just without making any adjustments to it. But I've learned because from what I've noticed, the ticket generator only uses the win percentage algorithm. I could be wrong, but it looks like if you go 5 deep, it's taking the 5 highest percentage horses to win, and it doesn't factor in the other algorithms. So what I do is, if there's a horse that has a really high win percentage that I don't like, I'll just take it out, and that messes it up in a good way for me, where now all of a sudden, instead of giving you all the favorites for the most part, or all the horses that are supposed to win, starts throwing in some crazy horses that sometimes can make it pay. So I usually try to take some obvious horses out and hope it doesn't shoot me in the foot.
Well, here's how you use it. And we have a lot of people that are getting good at it. And what they do, they'll generate their ticket for whatever their budget is. And then what they'll do, like a friend of mine had 4 horses in the first leg, and of a pick 5 or pick 6, actually. It was a rainbow pick 6 at Gulfstream Park. And he had 4 horses, and one of the horses was the 1 horse. A friend of his told him the 1 couldn't lose. So what he did, he forced the system. So he locked the race. You click the lock up here. He locked the race. He forced the system to single that horse,
right,
Dave, and then he regenerated based on his $100 budget, and he hit for $3,600.
And he got all these other horses that he wouldn't have had.
He added horses. So it's really key. This is why the ticket generator was never meant to just generate a ticket and play it. People do it all the time, every day, but it was more meant to be your handicapping buddy, where you could take it, make a couple of adjustments. And if you were right about those adjustments, then you just increased your chances of winning exponentially. So, all right, Dave, I could literally, you've been obviously a fan favorite, could talk to you forever. And I can't thank you for everything you do. In fact, my earpiece battery just went
there
off.
You go.
So, but I can't thank you enough. I love you, brother. And good luck, and follow me. Watch how I'm doing in the BCBC. I'll let me know if you like anything or you get any tips. Listen, I'm never too old to get tips, Dave.
You don't want my tips, but if I come up with anything, I'll let you know.
All right, my man. All right.
Okay.
I'll see you soon. Okay.
Best of luck. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Dave Weaver joining us there from FanDuel. Good friend of mine. We've been friends a long time. All right, everybody. Wow, this has been a long one. Can't thank you enough for those of you that hung in here. I know it's late for you. Breeders' Cups tomorrow. We got Breeders' Cup Friday, Breeders' Cup Saturday. I mean, just a heck of a lot going on here. I'm going to be in the BCBC. A lot of people that I care about are going to be in it. I wish them all the best as well. Tim, Christy, All my friends out there, all of our EquinEdge friends too. Thanks for your support. That's going to conclude the Breeders' Cup coverage here on EquinEdge. And I want to give a big thanks to our special guest, to Sarge. We had Gino Bacola, of course, Dave Weaver, Matt Dinerman, and all the guests that joined us throughout these 3 days. If you haven't had a chance to watch those, maybe go back in the first 2 days. You can go to the YouTube channel and you can find those. Before the races go off on Friday, go to Tuesday's show so you can get some insight that maybe helps you for the Breeders' Cup races that are going off tomorrow. Also, want to give a big shout out to my entire EquinEdge team. They're fantastic. I won't name them all, but they know who they are, and they're the best, and I appreciate them. Producer Brian, thank you. We hope that you enjoyed our Breeders' Cup coverage. Thank you for the contribution you made in the chat room and for just supporting us and joining us. So best of luck this weekend with all your bets. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.